Pablo,
Hey, Colin.
you win the prize. You're the first person to join this morning.
Afternoon here.
There you go. How's everything going, my friend?
Good, good. I just emailed you actually a moment ago with my PowerPoint and the recording.
All right, here, give me 1 sec because I'm just realizing I have to mute. I'm still doing my setup here, so give me 1 sec.
Sure. There's no rush whatsoever. Hello.
Great. I'm live streaming us on YouTube.
Oh, okay, good.
So it's playing in the background. So let me just figure out where did I put that YouTube video. Okay, but it's fine again. So yes, I'm sorry, you just emailed me. So I'll go take a look.
Yes, with the link to my recorded presentation.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
All right, I will get that up right now. I'm doing a post on odr.info as well. So I'll put the link on odr.info.
Excellent.
We are also live streaming the conference on YouTube. You can access the live stream here.
I thought now was the keynote.
I think it's in an hour.
Oh, in an hour.
Yeah, I think it's in an hour.
Okay, cool.
And wait, another person joined. Oh, it's Heather. Hi, Heather.
Morning. Good morning.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Where are you? It's probably chilly where you are.
Yes, Salt Lake City.
Salt Lake City, right. I remember right down the street from my good friend Mark. Yeah, I heard there's a lot of snow on the mountain. Paul Embley said, I think he's in Provo, and he said the mountains are heavily covered right now.
We got it pretty good. It was a touch and go there for a minute, but the last couple of weeks have been pretty good. So
sounds good. Sounds good. Well, it's good to have you.
Where are you at now? Are you in California? Are you Texas?
Yep. San Jose. Yeah.
Nice. Good.
So the sun's just coming up out here.
Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. It's been a while. I can't wait for us to have a face-to-face conference so we can see each other again.
Yeah, I definitely got to pick your brain on some landlord-tenant mediation options and ideas. So.
Oh boy, yeah, that's a big one.
There's some good stuff going on.
Yeah, we did this thing, Mediation Express, and Claire Fowler. You know Claire, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Claire designed our landlord-tenant flow for that. So the need is overwhelming. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yep. Definitely doing it here pretty good, and just looking to make it more streamlined and a little bit easier. So I'm going to reach out for sure.
Excellent. Well, I'm doing a few more setup things. So thank you for being here, Heather. I think this is going to be really interesting today, 2 days.
Yes. Thank you so much. I'll definitely be here.
Great. I'll chat with you in a bit.
Good morning, all.
Good morning, Jan.
Good morning.
Good morning.
To you.
Good
Thank
morning.
you,
Good
Mike.
morning. It's great to stay up late. Good morning. Good morning to you.
Right.
That's great, Michael. You begin us with a song. That's excellent.
You have a nice voice.
Well,
Broadcast.
I think I'm a little more baritone than you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially early in the morning, my voice is a little bit lower. Jan, what about you? What's your song to get us going?
Oh, I was thinking the same one. Yeah, when Michael started. What's the other one? Oh, yeah, it'll come back to me. But
okay,
yeah,
no,
another one of those musical cheery things. Yeah.
Don't mean to put you on the spot. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good to see you both. Good to see you both. Should be a very exciting day. We've got we're actually live streaming on YouTube as I speak. So we're gonna have a lot of fun activities today. We'll see how many people join us.
Okay.
We've got more than 300 registrants. So
that's great. And
great.
All right. Hello, William.
Oh, it's Winking. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Winking.
Hi,
nice
Janet.
to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. I heard so much about Colin Rue. So it's good to see him.
Hopefully good things.
Yeah.
They say you're an expert on online mediation.
They do say that, Winking.
I've heard that. I've heard that. Of all the things you could hear, I'm glad that's what you've heard.
Yeah.
Yes, all good things. Don't worry.
Wonderful. Winking, where are you dialing in from?
South Pasadena, California.
Wonderful.
Los Angeles County. Yes.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, I'm sure the weather is lovely there.
Yes.
But I've been chatting. Heather's in Salt Lake City. Michael's in St. Louis, and Darren, who just joined, is in Ontario. So I think it's a little colder where they are. Pablo, I imagine it's wet where you are. Well, but he's muted. But it's great to have you here, Winking.
Thank you. It's great that you guys are organizing this. I appreciate it.
Oh, you bet. Darren, hi.
Hello, Darren.
Good to see you, brother.
Hello. How are you folks?
We're pretty good.
Very, very good.
I love the beard. It looks great.
You know what? I have COVID given up. I am not shaving until all of this foolishness is done.
Oh, nice. Okay. Well, I think we're in the hunt for the end here. I think I see the light at the end of the tunnel. So.
Well, I've decided it better come quick or I'm going to end up looking like a hillbilly. So one of those two. How are you all?
It suits you well, actually. I like it.
Thank you.
All my heroes in dispute resolution have beards, and I've told my wife to prepare herself. It's going to happen at some point.
Why, are you planning for your wife to grow a beard?
I'm open to all possibilities. That wasn't really what I was thinking of. Good morning, Ethan.
Hi.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ethan.
Morning, everybody.
Hi, Ethan. Good
Hi,
morning, Leah.
Hi, Leah.
Good morning, early morning.
Yeah.
Good to see you. Good to see you.
But the sun is rising right now, so it probably for Winking also, right?
I can see that on your wall behind you.
I know, it's really pretty. So I'm happy to be up.
Yeah, it's beautiful here. The sun is rising. Yeah, all golden.
Good morning, everyone. Colin, are we recording?
We are. Thank you for reminding me. Actually, we are live streaming on YouTube as well.
Wow.
But, I will actually hit the record button now, so I can start our recording to the cloud. So, okay.
Ethan, I sent you an email regarding the book discount. So if you want to announce that, then I'll put it in the chat. And if you're busy with something else, I'll just put it in the chat once or twice.
Yeah, it's also in the video.
Great. Okay.
Can you hear me all right?
We can hear you just fine. Okay, so I did a post on odr.info with all the info, all the connection information saying we're now live, and I'm updating the final streaming presentation links. So I'll upload that too. So I think we're in good shape. Good morning, Mike. Thanks for joining us. Happy to have you here.
So the early arrivers we can greet personally, but when we get up to 200 or 300, probably won't be able to do it.
Probably. I'm gonna have to keep my mouse hovered over the mute all button. But I've turned off video sharing for everyone, and then I'll just turn it on. So I'm actually gonna make you, Leah, a co-host.
Ready.
All right. All right. And
Leah,
Hello.
Ethan.
how are you?
Very good. How are you?
I work much too hard for a good man, but other than that, I'm fine.
It's good to see you.
Thank you. You as well.
Colin, when I'm done, I have to link up somehow to the video. Or do you want to just start that?
Ethan, I'm going to show it whenever you say, now we'll look at the video.
Oh, okay.
I've got it queued up, so I'll just grab the screen and turn it on, okay?
Good.
So Leah, you know, when you share your screen with audio, you have to click that special box. Okay, you got it all figured out. Great.
Thanks.
No probs. All right. Should I send out a reminder to all of our registrants? I think we're like at 285. So why don't I send them a quick reminder? It's kind of like the moment in the party, you know, where you're expecting everyone to come over and it's 5 minutes before and you're like, all the canapes are out, the bunting is up, and you're like, is anyone actually going to show up for my party? And of course they are, but there's that moment of pause. Even if it's just us, we'll have fun.
Absolutely. And we've got folks from all over the place. Heather, great that you joined us. Thank you.
Definitely good to see your faces.
You too. And welcome to other folks. You turn your screens on if and when you want, but we see you, and welcome to Mike and Mari and Ween.
Thank you. It's winking.
Winking.
Okay. Sorry.
Like when you wink, your eyes winking.
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 Thank
Beautiful.
you. Yeah.
Beautiful name.
Thank you. Thank you. We have such wonderful people here.
We do. And the pleasure of doing it online is that we can have people from all over the world join instantaneously, which is really great.
I met so many people online, all over the world.
Where are people calling in from if they don't mind sharing? Anyone who wants to. I'm in Massachusetts in the US.
I'm in South Pasadena, California. How about the rest of you?
I'm in San Francisco.
San Jose.
Yay!
I'm in Toronto.
Yay!
I'm in Boston.
Oh, another one from Massachusetts.
Salt Lake City, Utah.
Wonderful.
Darren,
And now we have Paris.
Yep.
Paris.
Okay, right.
Darren, I didn't recognize you with your beard.
I recognize the voice. Where, let me find the picture here. Hold on,
It's
hold on.
Vipez.
There she is. How are you, my dear?
Fine, and you? It's been a while. I mean, last time was a
has
year
been a
ago.
while.
I
It's so nice.
agree, Merez. The beard threw me off for a second.
Merez's beard or mine? So nice to see you. You know, I was just talking with your friend, was it Marco this week?
Marco Giacoloni.
Absolutely. He's in Belgium.
Yep, correct.
Yeah, lovely young guy. It's great to see what he's up to.
Absolutely. Yes, I remember that you have spoken in Williamsburg about the divorce system and whatever system he was putting in place. Yeah.
Absolutely. So it's nice to keep on top of what everyone's doing.
Exactly. That's the benefit of this group. Dan, I hope your voice is doing better.
Not a lot better.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm not going to talk at all today.
Yeah.
Okay, we're wishing you well.
I like it, Dan. It's got kind of a sultry rattle to it. You sound like a late night DJ.
I was told by somebody the other day that I could sing country music.
That's how you
Country
convert
music. I like that. I like that.
old videos.
Hi, Bill. Good to see you.
Greetings, all.
All right. I think very soon we're going to get to the point where I'm going to need to mute everybody when they come in. But it's great to see everyone. Thank you so much for making the time. We're going to be testing the boundaries of Zoom today. I've upped us to the really big accounts, so we should be able to accommodate everyone. But if we do hit our limit, I can expand us for tomorrow. And we are streaming on YouTube, so people can watch on YouTube as well. All right, we've got 3 or 4 more minutes before we kick things off. Yeah, Dan, I'm gonna await your country album with bated breath. I can't wait to hear all the songs. Bill, how's the weather up in Detroit?
We're into some nice weather now. We had 60 degrees yesterday for an unusual high.
Nice.
After, it was bitter cold last week, so it's a contrast effect.
Yeah, this is the time of year where if you don't like the weather, just wait 5 minutes.
Right.
They got 21 inches of snow here in February.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
You get lake effect snow, Bill?
To some extent, when I lived in Syracuse, I had the true lake effect experience, but in Michigan and Detroit, it's not quite the same. We get a lot of protection from the Great Lakes. We have our climate seems to be moderated compared to other parts of the country. I'm throwing a little regional pride in here.
That's fine. We have many regions to highlight today.
So I stand corrected. We have 333 registrants.
Well, let's give them another minute or two, Colin.
Sure.
Hello.
Hello, welcome.
Hello.
To have this conversation with you and listen to such interesting matters.
Well, that's what we're hoping. Yes.
Thank you so much for making the time to dial in. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. So you've probably noticed I've hit mute all. I'm not going to be shy about doing that throughout our time together. But so if we can just stay muted unless we're speaking, that would be much appreciated because we're going to have a lot of people on the call. So Ethan and Leah, whenever you're ready to kick things off, you can just unmute yourself and get things rolling.
Well, Leah, why don't you decide whenever you're ready? I'm ready.
Okay, great. Well, I'd like to welcome everyone to, this is probably the 22nd or so year we've had an online dispute resolution forum. However, this is the first time it's online. Ironically, we've been meeting around the world in amazing places, gathering to discuss the development and to further the development of the online dispute resolution field and its connections with other sectors in society. And so while we deal with the tragedy of a pandemic, we also have all of us tried to foster resilience and opportunities to stay connected. And just want to thank everyone for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us. Thank you to all the presenters who will be here for the next couple days and for all who will be participating. And I turn it over, I'm Leah Wing, I'm the co-director of the center, and I turn it over to our esteemed director and the founder of the field and the founder of ODR, Ethan Catch.
Well, thank you for the compliments, Leah. The original idea for this meeting was to celebrate the publication of the second edition of the book, Online Dispute Resolution Theory and Practice. It's a big book, and we look forward in the beginning of May to seeing the second edition of this book. Many of the authors of chapters in the book are fellows of the National Center, and we're most grateful to our publisher, 11 International Publishers, for its support of this project. 11 also publishes the International Journal of Online Dispute Resolution. And if any of you have an article about ODR that you're interested in publishing, please get in touch with me. I do want to acknowledge not only Leah, but Colin Rule, my oldest friend in the ODR world, and Jan Martinez of Stanford Law School, a newer friend and collaborator who really put most of their effort into this forum. And I acknowledge if the technology breaks down at some point, that's also their responsibility. Some suggestions about what to keep in mind during the 2 days. Day 1 is devoted mainly to the relevance of artificial intelligence and how it links to ODR. This, of course, is a critically important issue as we move forward. Day 2 is more varied, with presentations about dispute system design, accessibility, peace tech, and more. I think that a highlight will be the keynote describing some extraordinary work being done in India. More generally, however, I think the conference and ODR in general is about the following. First, that conflict is everywhere, but conflict resolution is not everywhere. Roger Fisher, in arguing for the expanded use of ADR in the 1980s, stated in Getting to Yes that, quote, conflict is a growth industry, unquote. And new approaches and expanded use of ADR was needed at that time. Conflict is now, it's fair to say, a super growth industry, and ODR needs to provide super dispute resolution and super dispute prevention. Second, for this, to accomplish this goal, we need tools like Zoom, but even more, we need systems, collections of tools, collections of many tools that move us beyond Zoom to AI-based and other systems that are powerful, that scale, that are global, that touch both public and private arenas, and that are employed when appropriate. I think these are among the main themes to grapple with over the next 2 days. We have a 13-minute video about the book from Dan Rainey, and we will hear Dan's voice. Unfortunately, Dan is suffering from laryngitis today, so we won't hear him live, but we will, through the magic of the web, hear him. And Leah, do you want to start that?
In a couple of months, the second edition of ODR Theory and Practice will be available. Like the first edition, it's a tour de force of information about ODR, gathered from experts from literally around the world. Time will not allow for comments from all 33 authors, but this sample of comments will demonstrate why the second edition is an important addition to the growing body of knowledge about online dispute resolution.
ODR is a field recognized by the dispute resolution field. It's been a few years since I got a question. Well, you can't do this, you can't do that. What is ODR? I don't get those kinds of questions anymore. That's a mind shift that's astonishing, really. I think a lot of the predictions that we made with the first edition probably have come true with the second edition, and I think there are hot topics in ODR that are present in the new edition. There's room for debate about we can debate with people about ODR because it's a known field.
Technology and dispute resolution were previously considered an intersection of topics that are for a luxury discussion and consideration. Technology is no longer a luxury, and ODR in relation to disputes is now a reality, a true reality. So I see the significant change is that since then people have come to appreciate the important role of technology and its integration in dispute resolution processes. So all these matters and more are indeed timely, and the book is a must-have really treatise addressing all these aspects of ODR. So for all those who are interested in the field of online dispute resolution, be it the recent trends in the field, the updates, and the interdisciplinary approaches of ODR and other important legal aspects, this is really the leading authority on the field.
As ODR has started to expand worldwide, I think we are capturing a number of the meaningful changes that have occurred in this book. There are a lot of wonderful publications out there, but I believe that this book, Online Dispute Resolution Theory and Practice, second edition, is highlighting some of these significant changes in ODR usage as well as theory. We have seen an explosion in innovation worldwide. And I want to emphasize the worldwide point because one point of pride I would say about the book is that it has to offer a variety of perspectives from around the world. Why would an academic or a practitioner or a student of dispute resolution and the law be interested in this book? Not only to be caught up on all these changes that have already been taking place, but in actuality, I would say that technology is a disruptor in all the good ways and all the bad ways. It's a disruptor not only for how we handle conflict, but also in our thinking. And so there are frames of reference and our framing about how we think about conflict resolution can be deepened and broadened by both looking at the patterns of changes, the research on new cases and new forms, and the new questions that this book raises.
The use of technology has exploded over this past period of time with the pandemic and its use in dispute resolution. And this is really bringing together a group of people who have a lot of experience in this area, who are helping us to think through the issues with regards to using online dispute resolution for various matters. My particular article part is on access to justice. I like to talk about using technology, but not technology. The idea of the transparency of the technology being used is a really important topic that's part of this. Many times people talk about technology as a black box, and there's an effort to have more transparency and what some people call a white box about what's going on there, so that people are comfortable with the use of these technologies.
With the pandemic, everything's changed. We now have relationships in business, we have relationships personal, we have relationships where we're doing nearly every meaningful element of our life without leaving our backyard. And that's a fundamentally different expectation to the tools, the technologies, the strategies, the pathways, how we would even look at all of them. It fundamentally is a completely different expectation of how we build, wield, and make the best use of trust in this new environment, which is where we're starting from this new edition of the book, need to be anchored in a true comfort in what the true technology is, its true opportunity to provide pathways that we never have thought of before, and our complete understanding of what its holistic possibilities are, both negative and positive, for how we would interact and rebuild these processes and how we start moving alternative dispute resolution into not just this fringe item that may work if you lost something online, but more into how will I resolve disputes in an environment where we can't all sit around the table.
You have to buy this book because it was written for the most experienced people in the online dispute resolution field. And now is the moment to read what the pioneers think about what's happened and what will happen with this area. La razón por la que yo compraría este libro es que vas a estar leyendo a los pioneros del campo de la resolución de conflictos en línea por más de 12, 15 años, quizás algunos más. Va a ser un vehículo muy importante para comprender, para entender, para leer cómo vas a generar en tu práctica los estándares, las normas éticas y cuál va a ser la posibilidad de hacer dinero en este campo profesional.
What ODR can do is increase access to justice, and the technologies that are available and the things we can do asynchronously and the things we can do remotely can reach populations that have had historic difficulty getting involved in court. We make this technology available on mobile phones, and suddenly we're reaching a population that we have not been able to reach for a long time. So number one, it's going to happen just because of the monetary reasons, but beyond that, it's going to happen because of inertia. Just like the current users are struggling a little bit to adopt technologies because they want to bring their offline practices online, there's a younger generation that doesn't want to give up the technologies they're using. They don't want to do what we've been doing for decades. They want to continue to use their technologies for justice, and they're going to do it. And one thing our book can do is at least put some guidelines and framework on those online practices, maybe provide some direction so it's not chaotic, and that people who are bringing their technologies online actually have some idea where they might want to go.
Now, more than ever before, resolving disputes online is crucial to give access to justice, especially that many courts around the world are closed. And in normal times, in any case, they were already suffering from a huge backlog in all jurisdictions. So it is essential in the 21st century that the court systems, so the public justice and private justice through various dispute resolution techniques, including arbitration, mediation, adjudication, ombudsperson, and so on, become available online in all jurisdictions. We must realize that millions of people are denied justice, and that access to online justice can contribute to offer remedy for very small claims of a few dozens of dollars, but also for larger value claims. The chapters of the second edition of ODR, Theory and Practice, share the perspective of the authors and their experiences on a variety of topics such as ODR and arbitration, virtual hearings, ODR and the justice system, social justice, data security, lessons from ODR design, and so on. The book is useful to professionals, dispute resolution organizations, funders, state courts, and users in general.
Suddenly, traditional ADR practitioners were using these tools and becoming ODR practitioners. ODR outcomes since publication of the first edition generated enthusiasm and higher expectations from people who otherwise would not have considered even trying ODR. And in my chapter on ODR negotiation, I tried to offer a fresh look at the topic in a more expansive way than Volume 1. In the second edition of the treatise, I try to explore ODR as a collection of tools that help negotiators, which is all of us, achieve better outcomes and better process when we engage in conflict. So I think that the second edition is going to help readers make better choices about whether and how to use ODR in a way that is more ethical as well as more effective. So these updates in the second edition, I think it should help readers be more prepared to make better decisions, whether they're policymakers or practitioners, advocates, parties, researchers, developers. I think the second edition can go a long way to help make this world a better place.
Parties and attorneys and judges and dispute resolution organizations and referral organizations, everybody, the world, has had a taste of this technological adaptation, technological advancement, and a taste of these technological interactions in a way that they never had before. And a lot of our assumptions about, well, parties will never go for it, or mediators will never go for it, or judges will never, whatever it is that we had said. So now we have at least a better picture of, you know, what of that was true in the first place. And B, we also have this new status quo in which everybody had at least touched it. I think in general, people coming out of COVID, whatever the new normal will be or won't be, people are now far more receptive to the notion that technology might have something to contribute. And I think that just as people start to sort of lift their heads out of the murk of COVID and think of, yeah, well, what about moving forward? That's when the book is going to hit the shelves. And I can't think of a better book to hit the shelves or a better time for it to come out.
Great. Well, thank you so much for that, Ethan. Are there any other comments that you'd like to make about the arrival of the book? And I think it was wonderful to see all those interviews with all of the different authors. Jan, please.
Yes, could we put the pre-publication link in the chat?
I will say yes, although I don't have the pre-publication link. So maybe Dan or Ethan,
Yeah,
maybe you can do that as well.
Great. Thank you.
It's there already in the chat box.
Great. Perfect. So it looks like there is attendees of the ODR forum can receive a discount on the new edition soon to be published, and the link is right there. Excellent. Any other comments, Ethan?
No, order the book. I'm a little dated, but if in the old days, I would ask the library to order a book.
Well, I know that that's another thing. We have a lot of academics on the call, so maybe they can appeal to their various libraries as well to get it out there. But all right, excellent. Well, with that, should we move on in our agenda?
Think so.
Excellent. Well, again, let me add to Leah and Ethan's welcome. It's wonderful to have all of you here. I think this is going to be a very exciting 2 days, and I'm particularly excited to be introducing my good friend Abhijit to do our kickoff keynote this morning. So Abhijit, I see you online. Can you hear me? Can you speak up, share your video?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
There we go. Perfect. Excellent. It's nice when it works. I am delighted to have Abhijit with us here this morning. Abhijit, I think this is your first ODR forum that you've attended, although you've heard me natter on endlessly about online dispute resolution. So I met a lot of wonderful people when I was working at Tyler Technologies, but definitely in the top couple is my good friend Abhijit. Abhijit was, he served alongside me as senior executive advisor at Tyler Technologies, but he's got 25 years of technology consulting experience in many different sectors, higher ed, nonprofit, but particularly legal services, legal aid. And I learned an enormous amount from Abhijit, particularly about what's going on with artificial intelligence. He was named the Fast Case 50 list of global legal innovators in 2017. And he regularly presents at conferences on access to justice and technology. He was the chief technology and officer of a consulting firm that created a bunch of different legal tools, Write Clearly, Read Clearly, D-Law. But I've found his perspective on AI to be enormously illuminating. I think there's a lot of kind of fuzzy thinking out there about artificial intelligence. And in seeing Abhijit's presentations and presenting alongside him, I find he can really cut through that. So Abhijit, thank you so much for joining us this morning. And why don't I hand it over to you? And then Abhijit's going to present for a bit, and then we'll open it up for questions. And I've got some questions too that I'm eager to discuss with him. So Abhijit, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Colin. And hi, everyone. I'm going to share my screen here.
There we go. Perfect.
Can you see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Is that coming through okay?
We're seeing a screen of red and blue masses with a little green dot in the middle.
Yes. What is that picture? Have you seen this picture?
I have not. I have no idea what that picture is.
It is the surface of Mars, showing the area around the Jezero crater. That's where NASA's latest rover, Perseverance, landed. The Jezero crater is an interesting place on Mars from a scientific perspective, a lot of geological research potential there. But it is also a dangerous place to try and land a rover. Perseverance, which scientists call Percy, affectionately, had to land here in a dangerous terrain. The blue areas are safe for Percy to land. The red areas indicate dangerous terrain that is not suitable for landing a rover. That tiny black circle right there in the middle is where Percy landed, surrounded by dangerous terrain. When Percy reached the outer limits of the Martian atmosphere after flying through space for 7 months, it had just 7 minutes for entry, descent, and landing. But it takes 11 minutes for a radio signal from Mars to reach the Earth. So mission control on Earth could not direct and control the landing. Percy was on its own. It had to autonomously figure out when to deploy the parachute, factor in the weather conditions on Mars at that time, and decide where to land safely in those blue zones. So Percy used artificial intelligence to scan the surface in real time, make a decision, and redirect itself to land safely within 7 minutes. NASA says this type of AI-driven technology will also help the rover avoid hazards on the Martian surface as it moves around. NASA calls this thinking while driving. Yes, Mars already has a self-driving car. Now, NASA has even more ambitious plans for AI in space, doing what they call drive-by science, right there in space without having to send all that data back to Earth. For example, instead of transmitting all the photos taken on Mars on any given day, which could take a really long time for all those pixels to be downloaded, a rover could use AI to generate text captions for each image and just send those captions back. Then this can help scientists back here on Earth decide which images are interesting or significant that they need to look at. Now, developing AI for space exploration is an amazing achievement. But using AI back here on Earth can be just as challenging and sometimes even more. And we'll get into that more a little bit later. But let's look at the term AI, artificial intelligence. It is a very ambiguous term. It's an umbrella term used to refer to several rapidly emerging technologies. There are so many, such as facial recognition, which uses the geometry of faces, or natural language processing, which can seem to understand human language and translate for us, and even generate articles. The term AI is used as a placeholder for one or more of these in our conversation. But sometimes it is just purely slapped on a product for marketing purposes or to make it seem more important product than it may be using an older technology. The term you probably hear most is machine learning, which is a process to derive rules from data in order to gain insights or make predictions. So while in traditional programming, a programmer would feed data and a program into a computer and to generate some kind of output, in machine learning, both data and recorded outputs are fed into a computer to generate an algorithm. So it's flipped around. And this is how they build AI tools like classifiers, recommendation systems, facial recognition, natural language processing or NLP, all these other technologies. This is a joke about how machine learning works, but it illustrates in a simple way how it works. You train an algorithm about what the right answer is, and then it will deliver that right answer every time. So it depends on the data that you have, on the data that you give the AI algorithm. So machine learning depends on large quantities of data. And we are generating large quantities of data of all kinds, something that we never had before. Social media posts, photographs, videos, location data, even personal medical data from your fitness watch. All that's up there to be used to develop new AI. I like to think of AI as a way to automate insights, focusing on deriving new insights from the data we have and using that to automate tasks. There are other words we can look at for AI as a way to extend our human abilities, to enhance, assist us in doing things that we couldn't do before, as in the case of the Mars rover, or handling work at a large scale. These are all things that AI can help us do, which we couldn't do before. Let's look at an example of how AI can be used along with human expertise. Over 7% of adults in India have diabetes. Physicians screen eyes to detect signs of diabetic blindness in the retinal scans and decide who needs surgery. There are 70 million who are diabetic in India and at the risk of diabetic blindness. There are only 11 eye doctors for every 1 million people. So how do we have a human expert, a doctor, look at all these retinal scans and decide who is at risk of diabetic blindness? It's a massive scale. So there's a bottleneck when it comes to screening patients. So to handle this large scale, a pilot project, automated eye screening using AI. Researchers trained a machine learning model by analyzing millions of retinal scans and showing signs of diabetic blindness. So you show a computer retinal scans, and you already know which ones were classified as having diabetic blindness and which ones didn't. The computer learns to differentiate between these two kinds of images using mathematics. And then it derives an algorithm that can then be used to identify future images and tell us whether it's at a risk or not. So the initial scan is in this system that they put into practice. The initial scan is analyzed by AI, by the algorithm. And if there's any probability of blindness, it is then referred to a specialist for further review. So this reduces the scale down to a human scale for the human experts that we have. They only look at the scans that have a possibility of diabetic blindness. So now, and the other advantage is that now the scan can be done in remote locations at a lower cost, and as a result, provide the service to more people. With the regulation mandating electronic medical records, there has been a rapid development of AI in health and medicine. It can be used to detect cancer, stroke, heart disease, just by automated analysis of X-rays and MRIs and CT scans. And combining all this data from different sources, different hospitals, different regions, putting that together can also deliver another benefit. You can look at the outcomes. You can decide which and you can use that to derive best practices. For example, in one instance, there was a data on knee replacement surgery outcomes was compiled together, and it showed that one surgical technique was able to improve patient recovery faster than other techniques. And so then that technique then became an accepted best practice. So that's this is how AI is being used in medicine. So here are the potential benefits of AI, right? You can use it to reduce the cost of a service. You can use it to provide service faster. You can provide better service, higher quality service. You can serve more people. You can help the humans involved in a particular service process by assisting them. And the end goal is you can actually help more people at a lower cost, quicker. But we have to also be careful how we deploy AI. It's not the genie that's dangerous, it's the unskilled wisher. Just because a machine has generated a solution does not make it right, does not make it a perfect solution. An AI algorithm is a prediction machine that depends on the observed and collected data, which may not completely reflect reality, or it may reflect all of our society's human biases. AI will then just amplify and automate those biases. In fact, it can make them more harmful by spreading those harms to more people faster, quicker. All the things that AI can do the wrong thing. And it's also, we can easily get excited by the potential of a new technology and neglect the precautions that we should be taking when deploying new technology. Let's take the example of radium, discovered by Nobel laureate Marie Curie. Once radium moved from lab to production, it was available to manufacturers to use in different ways. And there was a lot of excitement about this new element. All kinds of magical attributes were given to this new thing that we had. And there was great excitement that it could solve all our problems in various different ways. It was used in cosmetics, cigarettes, toothpaste. Sometimes the name was just slapped on, even if the product did not actually have radium, because the name itself carried excitement about the potential of something new. It was used on clocks and watches to make the numerals and hands glow in the dark. That's a very common use for that. And the workers who hand painted the dials were told it was safe, and they were given no protection. It was a new thing. It was exciting. So the workers used to paint these watch dials with a paintbrush, and they were told to lick the tip of the paintbrush to get a fine point. Their health suffered, and many died at an early age. These are all women working in those factories there at that time. It took a lot of time and work to understand the effects of radioactivity, the medical effects, and to learn how to protect against it. But at that time, when this was deployed, we had no idea. We were carried away by the excitement. Today, radium is used in very limited industrial and medicinal use. This story is historically important for labor law, for those of you who are interested. There was a settlement. The women who suffered from the horrifying effects of radium poisoning were called radium girls, and there's a landmark case about this. If you're interested, Netflix also has a movie about the story. So AI brings up really important concerns about data and privacy, about safety, about regulations, ethics. Algorithms are neither good nor bad, but they are certainly not neutral. If you'd like to get more into this topic, I recommend two books. The first one really was a starting point for me about understanding the risks of big data and machine learning as deployed. Weapons of Math Destruction by Cathy O'Neil, an excellent book. How big data increases inequality and threatens democracy. And this was from 2016. So we're seeing over the last 5 years how that has happened. Another book is Automating Inequality by Virginia Eubanks. And this one is about how high-tech tools punish the poor, and has case studies on how automated systems, when designed improperly or in a negligent manner, can cause harm to a lot of people very quickly at a massive scale. When you replace a human-run system with an automated system, the advantage is you can deliver the benefit to a lot of people, and you can also deliver that same harm to a lot of people. So these two books are really good. I love this quote: "An algorithm is an opinion embedded in mathematics." And this is something to remember when we talk about bias and fairness. There is nothing absolute about those concepts. These are discussions that we need to have, but we have to remember that the machine is not going to give us the answer. It is an opinion embedded in mathematics. Algorithms have a human component who gathers the data, which design decisions are made, how they are implemented, and how results are used to make decisions. And here's a secret about a lot of systems that claim to be AI. There's a lot of human work behind what's seen as a black box system. A lot of human activity going on under the hood there. And humans are involved in this. So algorithms are always the product of social, technical, and political decisions. This is where biases, values, and discrimination disappear into the black box behind the computational curtain. We have seen a lot of talk about ethics in the space of AI. It's usually organized around fairness, accountability, and transparency. When we talk about fairness, we're talking about what we as a community, as a society, are deemed to be fair. And that is not necessarily a question of mathematics, it's a question of our values. Accountability, this is something we try to build into our human systems. Who is responsible? Where does the buck stop, right? That's what we build into our human structure and institutions, into our hierarchies, and we try to build accountability into that. It can be easy to just displace that with an AI system and then to say that the computer was responsible. It's not. It's the human decisions behind that technology solution. So that's accountability. And it's just transparency. How are these decisions being made? How do we find out? This is really challenging because sometimes it's hard to tell how a machine learning algorithm has delivered an outcome. What was the thinking behind it? It's a mathematical black box. what we have to do is build human accountability and transparency into it so that it adequately serves the need for that particular use case, for that particular domain that we are applying AI for. You will probably see a lot of articles and discussions, controversies on AI ethics showing up. I see them falling into three areas generally. One is research itself. What kind of AI research should be allowed? Should we even be, should scientists, academic researchers be exploring meaningless correlations just because you can? Should we be exploring these kinds of correlations even if they might cause harm, might lead to systems that could discriminate? For example, looking at facial recognition for looking at faces and then just deciding arbitrary things about gender or intent or based on the data that we have. So is this good research? And that's a debate happening in the AI academic community right now. Development, most of the AI that we would use is going to be developed by tool makers. The big names, companies that have invested in AI, in developing AI, and they actually have significant research efforts within these commercial companies, developing tools that we use, cloud computing, AI as a utility, where you can plug into a software platform that builds up a machine learning system for you. How are these tools being developed? What are their ethics responsibilities? Things like facial recognition systems. What data sets are they trained on, and so on. And then deploying this new technology. So this would be, say, cities deploying facial recognition for crime prevention. That throws up a lot of questions. What's the data trained on? And should we be even using facial recognition to determine who might commit a crime? There's a growth of sensors in our world. Everybody has not just your fitness watch, but doorbell cameras that scan the street outside. And we have seen stories where these cameras were connected and all the images were then given to the local police department. Is that a surveillance system? Is that an authorized surveillance system? Is that community okay with that type of surveillance systems? So how should we deploy AI like facial recognition or machine learning algorithms that decide eligibility for loans? Things like that. So there are many cases, many articles that showing up with controversies around these three areas. One way to handle that is to start at the community level, I think. I work with the legal aid community, and what we did was back in 2017, we're concerned with how AI might develop and be deployed in our domain. So what we did was we had a series of community meetings at legal technology conferences, and tried to brainstorm with members of our community about what is important. What type of technology preserves our values and our objectives. And then we looked at it. Our effort, it lasted for a couple of years, was to engage our community and educate ourselves about new data-driven algorithm-powered technology, and then discuss and identify the impact of this technology. And then, most importantly, develop a commonly understood set of community principles and guidelines to protect and promote our professional values. So this resulted in a document that created a set of community principles and guidelines that were generated by the community itself as a common understanding of what is important to us. It's not about technology, it's about how we want this technology to be applied in our domain. And I'm looking forward to this conference for those kinds of discussions about how AI can work in dispute resolution. So here are the benefits, potential benefits and concerns about AI, right? Benefits are we could reduce the cost of a service, we can provide faster service, better service, we can serve more people. But we have all these concerns that show up about data privacy, whose data is it, where does it come from, what are the safety regulation and regulations that we want to build around the use of this technology and the ethics. So to deploy responsible AI, you need to involve all stakeholders and users in designing an AI system. You have to use the appropriate data. Make sure you have a data set that's as representative of the population you're serving as possible. You have to choose the appropriate algorithm for learning. You have to build a system that is meaningful for the domain when you drive a model from the data. Other things that we need to build into an AI system are things like an evaluation process, so that whatever AI model is, outcomes that come out of that, we evaluate them regularly, audit the results, and keep asking the question, is it doing what we want it to do? Just because a computer has generated a solution does not make it right. So we have to bring humans back into that evaluation process to audit regularly and make sure that the system, which often feels like a black box, is doing what we can do by looking at the outcomes. A system like this should also be able to handle edge cases. Remember, AI is built on data that we have in the past. If it encounters a new type of case, that's not something that the AI system can handle. That's something that we depend on humans, human judgment. So how do we handle edge cases? That is something that we have to build into the system. An AI system will need to be maintained just like any other technology. And here's a very important point. We know that an AI system can fail. What is the process, an alternative system or a process or a channel for users as a recourse when the AI system cannot deliver? That needs to be built into the system whenever you deploy AI. An alternative recourse, so you can contest, you can ask for more information about how a decision was made.
Молодец. Давай, давай. Go, go.
Often, we think of taking an existing system, it's a human powered system, an institution, a process that uses human expertise and judgment, and replacing the whole thing with an AI black box. But probably a better way to think about it when we start out is to look at parts of the system that could benefit from the things that AI is good at: scale, repetitive tasks within a particular set of automated outcomes. And automating just those while building in a human auditing system, keeping the human in the loop. So the emerging consensus is that AI can do certain things well, humans can do other things well, and how do we combine them in a really creative way so that together they can do more, do better things, keeping this human plus AI collaboration in mind and keeping the human in the loop whenever we add an AI-based component to an existing system. Whenever we develop new technology, we've always had to develop, along with it, new regulations, safety infrastructure and protocols, a legal ecosystem around it. And this happened with all the technologies that we have introduced in society. This is a photograph from 100 years ago. It's a row of New York City policemen photographed wearing sets of portable traffic lights. When it was 100 years ago and cars started showing up on roads, there was safety concerns and there was a regulation that needed to be developed, and a safety infrastructure had to be developed at the federal level, state level, local level, community level, and that has taken time to develop. But it needs to be developed around any new technology. I think we are at this stage very early in AI where we just have a new technology, and we still need to figure out how to regulate it, what's the right way to deploy it, what are the safety precautions we need to take. All those questions need to be answered, discussed and answered. And that's what I'm looking forward to this conference. Some excellent sessions ahead that will get deeper into these questions and look at it from the domain of dispute resolution, how AI fits into dispute resolution.
Thank you so much, Abhijit. Thank you. Wow, so much good grist for the mill. We've had a lot of excellent questions in the chat too that I want to surface, but I think our day is going to be much, much better now that you've laid us out so clearly with this presentation. I have one question that I want to ask just before I get to some of the questions that have been asked in the chat. We in the online dispute resolution space, we talk a lot about the fourth party, which is a concept that Ethan Katch and Janet Rifkin introduced in the first book in the field, Online Dispute Resolution. And the fourth party obviously is it's technology. It almost has a seat at the table alongside the other three parties, party one and party two, who are the disputants, and party three, who's the human neutral. And I think one of the points that you make really well is that people are often paranoid when you start talking about AI and machine learning that the computers are going to get rid of humans, that it's all going to be algorithms and they're going to take over everything and the humans are going to be irrelevant. But I think the vision that I think a lot of people in the ODR field feel is a better blueprint for where online dispute resolution is going is this third party, fourth party collaboration. Because we know a lot about the psychology of dispute resolution, and algorithms aren't really that great at navigating people through that sort of emotional journey towards resolution. It's not just so much that the algorithm spits out the resolution and the parties say, okay, well, I guess that's my outcome. So I wondered if you could just speak for a minute about a vision of these tools that is a collaborative vision, where humans are involved in partnership with the AI, and AI sort of takes on some of the tasks, but humans take on others. I wondered if you had any thinking about that.
That's a very good point. It depends on how we design it, right? It's up to us to design that system. And going back to my slide where we said instead of replacing a whole system with AI, find ways in which to integrate. So the question to ask is really, what are the limitations of human expertise in a particular system? And that could be things like scale, or delivering or doing a repetitive task, and that could be automated. To focus on those and see how AI can replace that human task with automation, with data-driven algorithm. But we can't just do a direct replacement, right? You have to also build into place a way to monitor that those outcomes constantly. That's really a question of design, designing a system, and it's up to us, right? It's not going to be a situation where we just deploy a product. And there've been many products that are portrayed as like, just take this and use it instead of AI-driven system instead of a human. And you have to ask those questions. Is this doing what we wanted to do? Is it doing it in the right way? And what happens to those who don't fit into this model?
Absolutely. And there are questions. There's a lot of great questions. We need to get to some of them because they're piling up. First of all, Abhijit, lots of compliments about your presentation. So you got to go back and read some of them because people are raving. But it reminds me, there was one of my favorite books was a book called Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams, and they want to figure out, this group of scientists wants to figure out the answer to life, the universe, and everything. So they build this big computer called Deep Thought. And they say, oh, Deep Thought, what is the answer to life, the universe, and everything? And Deep Thought says, well, it's going to take me 10,000 years or 10 million years to figure out the answer. So they say, okay. And then he thinks for 10 million years, and they come in and there's all this fanfare. And he says, the answer, what is the answer to life, the universe, and everything? And he says, Deep Thought says, 42. And they say, what? And he said, well, you should have asked a better question. That's the only answer I could give you. And I think when you have the picture of the genie lamp, I think it's really about what questions are we asking? How are we structuring the data? What are we providing the algorithm? And I think the black box nature of AI gives people pause because, and we'll come back to this. This is one of the questions that Ken asked. We can't really watch these algorithms do their work. It's sort of like they're operating at such a high level of complexity and abstraction. We can only evaluate them based on the output. And that I think is unnerving for people. So let me raise a couple questions. First, Linda asked that you mentioned an LSC document that's talking about sort of guidelines for AI that you helped to compile. Do you know where that's available? Is that on the LSC website someplace?
No, but I will share my presentation and that link with you after
Wonderful.
the session. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. Thanks. So let's see. We had a question.
I'd just like to add to that.
Please.
That was, we did that 2017, 2018. So it was community's early understanding of AI. And we organized it around those principles: fairness, accuracy, transparency, but also around some very specific legal aspects to it, such as due process and so on. So I'll share that document and my slide deck with you.
Great. So Frank asked, there's a professor at Princeton, Arvind Narayan, who suggested that simple traditional statistical analysis can often create better predictive results more transparently than AI. And he wanted to know if you had an opinion about that.
Yes, there are situations where what we are doing is, basic statistical analysis or data science can be adequate and can actually be easier because we know what it's doing, as opposed to a fancy AI neural network or something where it becomes hard to figure out what it did.
Right.
So it depends, but there is, again, this rush to use new algorithms. And for those of you in the software development community, this is very common as people come up with new frameworks and technology frameworks and libraries, and the programmers love to dive into those and start using them. But that's not always in the best interest of the task at hand. So we have to be careful about not falling into that trap and use the appropriate technology for the task at hand.
Well, I recall when I was at eBay, we had rules that were part of our resolution system. One of which was if somebody filed a complaint over an eBay purchase, and it was the first complaint they'd ever filed, and the value of their complaint was less than $10, just give them the money back. It's not that complicated. It's just a simple rule. It says first complaint, less than $10, automatic refund. And I would have buyers say to me, well, the AI decided that I was entitled to a refund. And it's like, well, okay, from their perspective, all they know is eBay said, hey, we've decided to give you a refund. They thought there was all of this complex rationale behind it, but a simple rule like that was adequate as well. So I think we don't want to overcomplicate things by putting AI everywhere. Yes, it may be that the AI could have evolved what the threshold would be for that refund over time if we had made it a machine learning platform, but we didn't. We just went in and put in a dumb rule, and then we had the ability to increase or decrease that amount. So I think there is a risk of over engineering things. Bill Waters asked, how does the computing capacity of modern mobile phones match up with the power needed for AI implementations?
Good question. I was reading in the article just a couple of days ago on the technology that's sent on the Mars rover, and apparently it's equivalent to an early iPhone or an early MacBook. So it's yes, AI. I think there's a different kind of thinking evolving too. The traditional model would be, let's collect data from everybody, from their phones, bring it to a central server, and then do the analysis there. But because of privacy and personal data security, it may be better to do that, some kind of analysis on the phone itself before sending it back to a server. And it's kind of the same model that NASA might be using with their drive-by science, like let the rover do the calculations and send us the summary. So they are developing, I think AI research community is developing new machine learning techniques that will work on smaller, less powerful devices on your phone. And our devices are getting more powerful too. So this might be helpful in some of the security aspects and privacy aspects of data, where you could keep that data on your phone, for example, it's personal data, but just send back to the server some a summary or an analysis or an anonymized summary that could be used for larger analysis.
Yeah, I mean, it is staggering to think about how much power is in these cell phones today compared to my old Apple II 48K. And think 5-10 years from now, we'll have quantum in our cell phones. So we'll see where it all leads. KC asked, are you aware of any publicly available sets of algorithms that would be useful in developing ODR decision-making modules? And he asked specifically, what value do TensorFlow and Azure offer to developing ODR systems?
I'm sure there are several models, but not specifically in ODR that I know of, or in legal space. We are still developing this, and problem is really that a lot of this comes down to language. The legal field is about language and understanding of language, and legal language itself is complicated. So it's not just an algorithm; it's also understanding our domain that becomes important. One effort I know that's going on right now is building a classifier for issue spotting. And this is being done in a project called Spot, S-P-O-T, Spot. I believe it's out of Suffolk law. And they're looking at, if you feed the algorithm a question written by a human saying, I have, my landlord is kicking me out tomorrow, and then properly classifying that as an eviction issue. So these types of projects are really hard because, of the variety in human language, and also mapping that across a very complex legal context. So I don't know of algorithms specifically, but I think the problem may be even more difficult than just finding the right algorithm or tool. It may be actually building the right insight into that model.
I completely agree. And I think Casey's point gets to the broader reality that it's unlikely that any ODR company is ever going to have the resources to build its own machine learning architecture at scale, but all of the big ISPs and platform providers are developing AI frameworks, machine learning frameworks. So obviously IBM's marketed Watson very aggressively, but I'm on AWS, I'm on the Google Cloud, I'm on Azure. They're constantly pushing their machine learning services, and they're delivered via API. So you know, you can use any of these frameworks to go and put data in and try and start a machine learning mechanism. So I think there's going to be an endless parade of different companies out here in Silicon Valley. They even buy spots on NPR. You know, hey, you're looking to build a machine learning framework. You know, try this one. So I think there's a lot of competitive action in that space in particular.
Yeah,
All right. Well, now let's get into the. I think the topic is going to animate a lot of the rest of the day. Pablo asked a question: should there be a certification system to ensure that algorithms used in ODR comply with ethical principles? And I think there's many questions along these lines. You know, how could we ensure that these tools that we're unleashing operate within a framework that we think can bound them and maybe prevent their use in malevolent ways? And I think this certification or auditing system, have you done any thinking about that?
No, I'm not. I don't know if I can answer the question in the context of ADR or ODR, but there is a lot of thinking going on around regulatory systems for this new technology. I don't know what form that will take. It's a discussion we need to have. Regulation is complicated, but it eventually develops, right? In most technologies, we have standards of service, factors of safety that are encoded in safety protocols. Those will have to be developed for the legal space, for ODR. These are the conversations we need to be having at conferences like this and deciding what we want. I think it's important for us as members of a community or a domain to state these, discuss and state these, and not have those be imposed by companies that have a solution, have a product, and want you to use it, and don't really understand what your specific domain's needs are. So I think that discussion, we need to start that discussion before a product is pushed onto the domain. And if we are tool makers ourselves here, you know, we'll be using AI or machine learning or facial recognition as a utility, right? That's kind of the thinking, is that this will be like electricity. You know, you can just tap into a facial recognition platform, feed it your images, and then you can build that into your facial recognition AI system to do whatever you want it to do. And you could even decide whether a person is worth being a customer or not just by looking at their face if you wanted to, right? And is that ethical? Is that correct? Should we allow that? These are the discussions we should have and outline those so that the tools that come our way take those into account.
Well, Jim Malamed asked a great question about, you know, public versus private initiatives. You know, I think your radium analogy is a fascinating one because, you know, this new technology or this new element is discovered and there's so much enthusiasm about it. People are doing everything they can. They're putting it in cosmetics, they're putting it on clock faces. And then later people realize, whoa, this is very dangerous. You know, people are dying from this. So, you know, then they have to kind of rein it back in. So I think there is an element of right now, the private sector is innovating. You mentioned before, I know we had talked about an AI conference that received more than 1,000 proposals from researchers. And some of the proposals were pretty questionable from an ethics perspective. I mean, one of the proposals was, can we use AI to do facial recognition to identify people's genetic or ethnic heritage? And, you know, they were, like you said, these were researchers who were doing it because they could do it. But the whole question is, should someone do it? Should we have a rulemaker? I mean, there's lots of dangerous things you can do with things that we use every day in our society, including, you know, toxic chemicals and electricity. I mean, the government regulates many things. So maybe there is an argument for government regulation in this space that would constrain private sector innovation. The other thing I hear in Silicon Valley all the time is, well, if the US or California passes a bunch of laws that constrains what we can do with AI, well, that just means it'll go to Bangalore or it'll go to Shanghai or it'll go to some other country where they don't have those regulations because technology is so borderless. So I think there's a very interesting question about what is the role of the public sector in maybe shaping the evolution of AI and regulating it to mitigate some of the potential downsides? Yeah. Ken mentioned, is there a way to have AI kind of show its work? He said, you know, when we were all younger and learning arithmetic, we had to show our work, how we got the answer before we got credit. Now we say, well, AI generates these outcomes, you have to evaluate the outcome. But is there any way that we can build these systems so that we understand some of the rationale behind it and then could use it to qualify our evaluation of the outcome?
It's an excellent question. When you do a data analysis in a spreadsheet, you can just look into those formulae that you've entered and see what's going on. With AI, we're working with big data, multiple variables, attributes, and it becomes harder to figure out what it did. So this is a difficult challenge. I don't know if anybody has a right answer for it. One way that I mentioned earlier was to look at outcomes only and then decide whether those outcomes are what we want and monitoring them. And that's one way. You don't know what's inside the black box, but you know what it's doing and you track those outcomes and you build a recourse in case it goes wrong. There are some other techniques that people are evolving, some researchers are evolving using, counterfactuals. Like if an AI system delivered a particular outcome, what if we took out, say, gender from that data set? What kind of outcome would it have given? Or if we take out race or income level, would that outcome have been different? And then using that counterfactual as a way to determine whether that outcome was fair or not based on our definition of what is fair. From the computer's perspective, it was mathematically correct. The question is whether from our perspective, from our human perspective, from what we are trying to achieve, is that fair? So there are some algorithmic techniques that researchers are developing to try to be able to explain AI, explainable AI. It is complicated though.
Well, Jeffrey mentioned that we need to develop a lexicon of terms to feed algorithms, which create a uniform set of definitions. I know you, Abhijit, you've talked about creating a shared data repository where lots of different organizations could contribute data, but it would be structured in such a way that we could all kind of make sense of it and potentially evaluate its accuracy. But I think there's obviously regulating it on the back end, but there's also kind of standardizing it on the front end. So we're all kind of having a unified conversation. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that in the legal services context?
Well, our justice system, certainly our civil justice system is very fragmented as far as standards are concerned. Each jurisdiction has its own way of doing things and collecting data. It sits in different silos everywhere. And so this is notoriously hard to do. But we know from other domains such as health and medicine that there are advantages to having a standardized way of collecting data, classifying it, storing it, combining it with privacy and patient privacy in mind. So we don't have that in the justice system yet. And it's something that would be nice to develop if we can. But our jurisdictions are all different, states are different. There's no one standard, and that makes it really difficult to do.
Yeah, and I don't mean to cut you off, but related to that, Fernando mentioned in the European Ethical Charter for the use of AI in judicial systems, it's required that the data processing methods have to be accessible and understandable. And he said the European Commission is having problems in order to know how an algorithm of machine learning may be understandable. So Fernando was saying, what's your opinion of the possibility of having AI in the judicial system submitted to audits and having some requirement that it be understandable by outside auditors? You know, related to that, while you think about that, I know that they have a case that's pending in Wisconsin where judges are using a machine learning based tool to assist them in sentencing. So like at the end of a criminal trial where you know, someone's been found guilty, the judge has to determine, okay, what's going to be the sentence? How many years are they going to go to jail? So they introduced this third-party software product that was created by a private company. So the private company has a very large data set of all these different criminal cases. And then the judge can come in and put in the details about the case. And this algorithm will then suggest, this is what we think a fair sentence is in the case. Now, it's not binding. It's not binding. It's advisory. And when they first introduced this algorithm, my understanding is the judges only went along with the recommendation about 50% of the time. But over time, after they've used this tool a bunch of times, they started to accept the recommendation from the algorithm 70% of the time, 80% of the time, now 90% of the time. And the challenge is, you know, outside advocates who are trying to fight for the rights of these of the criminals to get fairer sentences, they filed a lawsuit and said, okay, well, we want to see the data. Well, like, why is this third-party algorithm making the recommendations that it's making? Like, we want to be able to get under the hood and see it. And the private company said, no, we're not going to share that information because that's proprietary. It's our data set. It's not our obligation to share that. We built the tool and it's advisory. So it's gone to the Supreme Court. And I think it's a very controversial case, you know, how much. And I think what we've seen, again, is another dynamic of humans. When we start to use a technology tool at the beginning, we may really check it, you know, and say, well, I disagree. It should be this way. It should be that way. But over time, once you use the tool and you see it provides pretty consistent outcomes, you start to trust it more and more. And now, even though it's a voluntary tool, 90% of the time, the judges are going along with its recommendation. So again, this gets to the whole tension of who owns the data. Is, you know, if this private company says, well, we own the data, we're only going to provide the tool and you can evaluate it from the outcomes. So again, I think it's related to kind of what the question is.
I think it bears us really paying close attention to that particular case, because it's not just Wisconsin. Those kinds of programs are being implemented all across the United States. And the fact is that if it's going to, even if it's just advisory, as you point out, Colin,
sure,
the judges are becoming more and more dependent on that. And so when you do have those situations or cases where an advocate needs to be able to come in and argue on behalf of their client, to not be able to access that data and to just look at base outcomes, that's just not sufficient. And I think there has to be a way for advocates to be able to come in and look at what's going on, in particular in individual cases.
And I should note that Linda is from the ABA, so she's on the front lines of this. She's seeing it not only in the dispute resolution context, but I think this is happening across the board. So, yes. Abhijit, what are your thoughts?
Oh, I agree with Linda. I think there's we need to find ways to maintain that kind of accountability and transparency that we hopefully had in a human-based system, and it really complicates things when you put in a machine in its place. You know, who's accountable for the decisions that the machine made, and while it is nice to have human and AI working together, it makes it even more complicated, because now you have, as you mentioned, Colin, your example, that a machine subtly influencing human decision making in a loop there, and then that creates a problem, because now you don't know who's accountable. So I don't know the right answer for that one, but it's good that at least we are aware of that these things can happen, and we should try and figure out how to address them.
Yeah, and Jim also mentioned, you know, mediation is a little bit different because the parties do retain authority to say yes or no to the outcome. So in an evaluative situation, or like a sentencing situation for a court, I think the potential for automating inequality through these mechanisms is higher because it's compulsory. But if you have an AI that's advising parties or asking questions or putting up offers on the table, but the parties retain control, I think what we might see is the dynamic that the judges have experienced, where over time we start to just say, well, let's go with what the algorithm says because we trust it, even though we don't know really why it ended up making the recommendation that it made. This is a question I'm asked over and over again, so I'm going to push it to you too, Abhijit. How will the role of attorneys change once we have AI-based dispute resolution?
I don't know.
Fair
I look
answer.
at
Fair answer.
I look at it. I look at this when I'm faced with questions like this. I look at what's happening in other domains. You know, has the role of doctors changed with new technology? And medicine is fascinating in that sense. You know, we have robot-assisted surgeries, right? You have surgeries where the tools deployed by the surgeon are actually using AI and robotics to do some micro movements that were not humanly possible, but you still have a doctor in control and supervising the operation. Has the role of doctors changed? You know, how they're relying on data analytics to make their decisions too. So, you know, it's a hard question to answer, and each domain is going to face it in a different way. Based on the challenges of that domain. I think maybe dispute resolution will be a little different from the civil justice system, and so on. But these are details that will need to be worked out. But I don't know the answer to that one, how the role of lawyers will change.
I will say Richard Susskind wrote a great book with his son called The Future of the Professions, talking about how AI is going to change everything. I think, you know, there you go. You've got the courts right there. Excellent. Richard will be pleased to know that you're giving him some screen time. But I do think it's going to change enormously. If you think about finance too, technology's completely changed the way finance operates, and it's eliminated hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of jobs. But it's created many more. There's more people working in fintech today than there ever were before, even though we don't have the people on the floor of the stock exchange shouting orders. So I think it's going to transform the law, but there's going to be more people working in legal tech and the law in 10 years than there are today. But some of the jobs that existed previously are going to go away. Okay, well, we only have a few more minutes here, so let me roll up a couple things. Linda made a good point, and I think Orna also touched on this, is sort of the trustworthiness, perceptions of fairness of proceedings, and mistrust in algorithmic justice. You know, is there something that we could do now to make this, and it might be that these certification efforts or public regulation or something, I think that there is a buzz out there that AI is sort of fatally flawed, and it's just going to automate all of the injustices out there. And as you say, it's just a tool. So is there something that you think we could do now to help to reinforce that we're doing the right things in order to keep these mechanisms fair and trustworthy?
Yeah, Pew did a survey, a research study, and they asked Americans if they trusted algorithmic decision making in any field, and it didn't do very well. It's like, no, we don't want a computer to decide something for me that applies to me. So there is low trust in that. It's a trade-off that people make and companies make and organizations make between convenience and accuracy, for example. It's like, you know, it's good enough, and so let's use it. But that's a slippery slope there, and I don't know how we can. One of the ways to improve the trust is the transparency aspect of it. How was the decision made? What was, if there was a machine score that you got? What is that score? How was that designed? And we still have those issues in the finance sector, in the credits, right? The credit scores, how they work, which companies control your credit scores. Can you actually see them? Can you change them if they're incorrect? If your name is wrong on it, you know, those things are not perfect either, and they're not. You know, they're not amazing new technologies that are just coming out. It's been around with us for a while, and we haven't perfected those either. But it comes down to those, you know, fairness, accuracy, and transparency. And how do we build transparency into that decision making? Keep the human in the loop. Make humans accountable for the machine decisions, and not say that the machine decided it, and therefore I am absolved of my responsibility for ruling. We want a human to be able to address the things, the cases that are edge cases that the computer hasn't seen before, because we know that the computer cannot decide something it hasn't seen before. It's learned only on the things that it knows. That's a human ability. We need to bring that back into this AI system design.
And I think when we think about the third party and the fourth party, delivering an automated, quick, potential suggested resolution, but we need to make it very easy for the parties to request a third party to come in and reevaluate or overrule it. And, so I think that that's very important. All right, well, the last question, and we had a bunch of different people talk about this. Orna mentioned that that her law and technology clinic in Israel used AI to detect social media bot accounts before the Israeli elections. People have been talking about, Erica talked about AI spotting false news. Could we use it to determine what's fake and what's not? And then Chip mentioned that he's done a lot of large scale social conflict, kind of like what we're experiencing in the US right now. And could you envision ways in which AI could be helpful in dealing with those kinds of disputes? So put on your futurist hat, Abhijit. Can we use AI to solve all of these complex social disputes and challenges?
That's a tough one. But it's a problem in a way created by the technology itself, right? It makes it really easy to amplify disinformation and spread that information. It's assisted by technology, but somebody made that decision to allow the tech to do that, right? And I think that debate is outside of the technology itself. Certainly, you can use AI to fight the problems that AI is creating, but how about trying to stop them happening in the first place and building trust outside of before getting AI involved in it, right? It's then that crosses over into business models
right,
and incentives for using AI in certain ways, and I think those are questions beyond the technology itself.
Well, I remember I attended a conference with Ethan 20 some odd years ago in DC. I think it was an ABA dispute resolution section conference. And one of the panelists and Ethan and I were both in the audience, one of the panelists said, well, technology is going to resolve all disputes. We're not going to have any disputes anymore in the future because it's all going to be worked out. And Ethan stood up and said, respectfully, sir, I think the power of technology to resolve disputes is dwarfed by the power of technology to generate new disputes. And I think that that's absolutely true. I think AI can be used to create confusion or to resolve confusion. And I think there's going to be a lot of chaos. We're kind of in the Wild West period here. But hopefully we're going to learn how to civilize cyberspace and constrain the use of these tools to minimize their negative effect. I think Twain also said, a lie can get halfway around the world before the truth gets its pants on. So hopefully the truth is getting its pants on and we can start to use our AI to tackle these issues. Well, Abhijit, I want to say thank you so much. Please, if everyone could give him a round of applause. This was a great opening for our conference. This was wonderful. Exactly what we needed. And I think we have other panels where we're going to get deeper, particularly into ODR and AI. But I think for right now, we've got a 15-minute break. So what we'd like for everyone to do is turn off your cameras, stand up, remind yourself that you have a body below your shoulders, go get a cup of coffee, do whatever the biology is asking you to do, and then let's come back here at 8:45 California time, which I think is 11:45 East Coast time, and then we will resume our next session. Leah, Ethan, anything else before we break? Okay, great. See you all in 15 minutes. Thank you so much. Actually, now 12 minutes. And Abhijit, thank you so much, my friend.
Oh,
okay.
Abhijit, it was great. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're most welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you paced it beautifully. So regardless of your background, you would be able to track what you were saying and the issues you addressed. So thank you.
You're most welcome.
It's sort of the hardest thing to ask someone to do. Present on a very complex technical subject in such a way that someone who knows absolutely nothing about technology would really get it. And I think you nailed it. So thank you, Abhijit. All right, let's give everyone the break and we'll see each other again in now 11 minutes. Okay, great. My clock says 8:45. One of the benefits of these online conferences, not only is there less cleaning up afterwards, which is nice, but it's also easier to get people in from the hallways. I know at conferences, sometimes you're like, all right, okay, come on, let's go. Everyone come in. But the conversations are so good. Everyone's wandering around chatting with their friends. But why don't we drive ahead? I'm going to hand things over to Leah in just one moment. But let me just share the agenda here. There's one or two things that I wanted to point out. So we've already had our welcome from Ethan and our celebration of the book and Abhijit's keynote, and we've had our break. So now we're going to have an AI bias and ODR panel with Leah and Ben and Julie. And then we're going to reconvene in the afternoon, 4 p.m. East Coast time, 1 p.m. West Coast time. And then we've got a panel on algorithmic ODR with Linda, Chris, and Larry, a break, and then one final session with Andy, Nicholas, and Graham. So this is going to be a very, very rich rest of the day. I hope you've all had a chance to take a look at the agenda. I put a link into the chat. But the other thing that I really want to point out is the third page of the agenda actually has links to some great pre-recorded presentations. Frank Fowley talking about sport dispute resolution, Spinak talking about new technology in ODR. Pablo, an expert on the EU ODR platform, he's done a great presentation. All of these are really great. I've seen them, and I just want to make sure that people know that these sessions are here. We couldn't fit them into the live agenda, so the presenters were very kind in creating their PowerPoints and recording their presentations. So please make a point of checking these out, and I've also posted them on the homepage of odr.info. So with that, let me stop my share, and I will hand it over to Leah.
Thank you, Colin. Well, since we've had many people join since we started, I do want to just give a warm welcome and thank everyone for spending part of your day with us. My name is Leah Wing, and I'm co-director of the National Center for Technology and Dispute Resolution, your hosts, and also teach at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst in the US in the Legal Studies program. And it is my great honor and pleasure to be kind of hosting the next panel. I'm going to introduce my fellow panelists and let them go first, and then I will follow up like a caboose and do my presentation at the end of the panel. But I do want to just again thank our keynote for the day. Abhijit, that was simply fantastic. What a way to set the stage for the entire conference, as well as particularly for today when we're focused on AI. And I want to echo Colin's comments about making AI translatable to an audience that may not have spent a lot of time thinking about it before, but also raising some of the key, both exciting trajectories where we can think about how AI can be included in dispute resolution and dispute handling, but also raising some of the concerns. And our panel, the job of our panel is to build on that. We are going to be digging a little bit deeper in concerns about bias, in particular in AI. And then we have a panel that follows that's going to be talking about in several hours about some ways to try to address some of these issues around transparency. So we're hoping between these two panels to balance building on those two trajectories that Abhijit mentioned. So without further ado, let me let you know who's going to be coming up. We have Professor Ben Davis, recently retired, who is from the University of Toledo Law School in the United States. And we have Julie Sobowale, who's the Director of Communications for the Law Society of Saskatchewan Province in Canada. And so I welcome both of you, and I will turn it over to Ben.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for this opportunity to speak with everyone today and for this absolutely wonderful, wonderful program that is going on. This morning was just so stimulating, and I'm looking down the list. So the approach that I wanted to take, if you will all permit, is to talk about this in terms of a kind of overarching phrase, which is technology, not tricknology. And I take that word tricknology from actually one of the, I don't know if anybody remembers these folks, the Central Park Five, who were convicted of, falsely convicted of I think it was a rape, and went to jail, and then ultimately were exonerated. And one of those gentlemen went on to become a doctor in some kind of PhD program and came and speak. And he mentioned that term of technology, not tricknology. And I was like really struck by that idea of what tricknology has in it. So let me take inside of that idea of thinking about technology, not tricknology. Let's take down a step. And I can't tell you how much I appreciated Abhijit's presentation to really stimulate me. So the first level is the notion of algorithms. Now, I like to say that we all have algorithms that we've been operating under most of our lives. These are sort of shorthand methods that our brains operate under, and in the machine language of our brains, to deal with certain different situations that arise with this. So those kind of shorthands got me to thinking about, well, you can have algorithms and that's fine, but they can also do algo wrongs, okay? And those are the things that make me, just like in your ordinary life, you go around and do things, and you can do things that end up being wrong because of your analysis being imperfect. I think about these algorithms as having that risk of error, and in many ways, Abhijit pointed that out because of their familiarity with certain data sets, and then some kind of new data set or the edge case comes in, and they really don't know how to handle it. So that's one of the ideas that I like to just throw out, is the concept of, can these algorithms do algo wrongs in terms of human visions of algo wrongs, of wrongs that have been done, whatever they could be, civil, criminal, whatever. That's part of this. The second idea with regards to these algorithms comes from a friend of mine who's actually a scientist, who once told me that he was really happy to get junk mail. And I was like, absolutely perplexed. Why would you be happy to get all that junk mail that we all throw away for things that we aren't interested in? He said he was very happy because it meant that the algorithms that had decided to pick him for that particular line of advertising did not know him. They did not know him well. They actually had put something that he would have no interest in. And as a consequence, he rejoiced at getting getting junk mail, because he had confused the algorithms. That was his term. And I thought that was such a brilliant term. I actually made a t-shirt out of it, because the idea of this capacity of each of us, and here us, we're all in technology and stuff like that, but that our role as confusing the algorithms, that we don't fit in. Some people may have seen the movie Gattaca a while back, which was about a totally predicted society. From the date of your birth, they would take a blood sample from you, and they could predict basically your possibilities all the way out to the end. And there was this guy who obviously was not very good. I think it was Ethan Hawke. It was considered to have a low-level life, and he wanted to be an astronaut, which was like the top of the top of the hierarchy in that particular future. And so he completely played the entire algorithmic system with all the physical tests, everything, so that he could become that astronaut at the end of the day, even though the system had indicated that he was not a person who would be eligible for that. So I find this particular human trait of confusing the algorithms to be something that should be called upon. The third thing is that when we talk about human and artificial intelligence, and here maybe I'm going to be a little controversial, I hope you enjoy this. I don't see them as being separate. In other words, the artificial intelligence is something that has been created by humans, and the humans are reacting to it. And so what you're getting out of the system of artificial intelligence is not something that is not human, but rather it is a construct, a human construct that is taking advantage of certain types of machine power, et cetera, to generate something from some data. And so in that sense, it's these are all human constructs that are operating, that humans are creating and humans are reacting to. One of the problems that this brings me to is sort of maybe my fourth point, is that the idea of using that kind of data in settings of very human frailty. We'll talk about the criminal settings as mentioned in the Loomis case that was discussed here, where judges are tending to rely on some number that this machine is generating to help dictate how they are going to decide on how much of somebody's liberty is going to be deprived. I find a very, very, very eerie, very, very creepy way of technology being brought in, or artificial intelligence being brought in to the judicial system. And it would seem that at a minimum, if those things are done, the classic sort of private sector, it's proprietary, you can't know it. I'm sorry, that doesn't work. If you're going to sell it to the judge, then you have to tell it to the judge, is what I feel like, which is to reveal exactly what's in there. And I know I've went on a panel or was at a conference earlier on a couple of weeks ago, where people were talking about white boxing these black boxes, of basically revealing what is in it. You know, almost you can actually set these things up in ways that it's very transparent why the number ends out this way from the calculation that is there. In a way, it reminds me of what Colin said early on about the rule for if it was the first person's complaint, if it was for less than $10, we gave them the $10. We refunded the $10 without any question. A very simple rule. I mean, you could argue that if it was somebody's to take a first arbitration, it was for under $100,000. That a number could be figured out that would be a reasonable initial proposed settlement between the parties, just to get it out of the arbitration. A simple rule like that might be put forward. Or obviously, if it's a first person's going to court for something, if it's not a big crime, it's some minor crime, you know, whether they would get probation or a tap on the wrist or whatever, you know, or fine, those kind of things. There could be sort of simple rules that might be theoretically suggested in those kind of settings. But I just think that you know, it's important to just have a certain amount of skepticism in this space. Have I got some more time, Leah? Thank you. Okay. So
definitely, you take 10, 15 minutes, whatever you need. That's fine. Thank you.
All right. Okay. So so there I've kind of gone down. I don't know. I call it the algorithm side, the confusing the algorithm side, the sort of the algorithm side of things. So I want to speak a little more over to the human side of these things. So, and this has a couple different aspects. I'll talk sort of in our world, and then let's talk about outside in the national security space, so to speak, because that's the biggest black box I know of, is the national security space and what they're doing behind that wall. Okay. But within within our world and in our space, I have always been impressed by a gentleman named W.E. Deming, who was the father of statistical process control in production, who really worked at finding what were the errors that were coming and basically try to reduce the error rates of systems for production. And there's actually a prize in Japan called the Deming Prize for the most innovative approaches that were there. And one of the things that he talked about with regards to the approaches to reducing errors was that when a error product was or something was made badly, in the United States, we tended to throw them in the pile of, oh, those are the errors and they're going to be reused. But in Japan, it would be like a prize. You have to analyze why this prize happened. What were the errors in the process that led to this error happening? You see, that kind of a use of, and then to retool the process so that that kind of an error couldn't happen. And so that's where I think that the idea of using artificial intelligence in certain aspects of dispute resolution, certain aspects of online dispute resolution, can help in providing maybe ways to avoid those kind of errors. One of the things that, for example, these large data sets is just, let's go pre-process for evaluation to see that your kind of dispute is similar to the kinds of disputes that have ended up this way. So do you really want to go into that process, whatever it is, arbitration or litigation or whatever, or would you like, maybe you want to be more in a mediation or even negotiation based on that? The tension with those kinds of things, however, is that does both sides share the same data as to what the forecast in the future, what the likely forecast is? Or is that become part of the negotiation strategy to not show your cards, so to speak, you know, with all the competitive bargaining as opposed to more collaborative approaches? I don't know, but it just seems that finding ways to reduce the error rates at different points along the way, I think could be good. One particular area that I think could be very interesting and is going on, and I think Colin has talked about this before, is the electronic use of conflicts checking. That is a algorithmic process, so to speak, I guess it would be called, for a particular neutral or arbitrator to be able to show to identify conflicts, or for parties to be able to see any potential conflicts which can influence the way that they would proceed in the case. So that's an area that's developing, moving more. That's a piece of the pie, so to speak, of dispute resolution that I was thinking might be one that would be amenable to this kind of technology, because it is not evaluative in a sense of giving a score or something, but it is identifying the potential risk situations so that individual and the parties in the case can evaluate. And it also kind of puts pressure on the arbitrator or mediator disclosure process to do a better job of thinking about any potential type of situation that might cause a concern. And why is this good? Because it helps to avoid, if we talk about in terms of the process flow, attacks on the process, typically an attack on an arbitral award if it's that setting, or a litigation based on non-disclosures made by the neutral. So it reduces the risk factor for the path for the dispute resolution that comes out of it. So that statistical process control vision of the use of artificial intelligence is one part I'd like to speak to or throw out there. A second aspect of this is the data sets. The data sets by themselves are biased. I looked at the Loomis case during the break and noticed that, for a majority of the cases that are talked about, people are pleading guilty, right? And then they're looking just so the sentencing process or the pre-sentencing investigation ends up being a very significant part of the data that the judges have. And it made me think from my colleague, Jelani Jefferson Exum's work on, well, why are people pleading guilty, and who are being put into the system, and all these other steps down the road that lead to the inequalities that are in society, which leads to me thinking that, well, there's something wrong with the only piece of data coming from essentially cases where people are pleading guilty because the system is set up for people to plead guilty. I don't know. It seems like it's a biased data set to start with. And that bothers me because of inequality with regards to the criminal justice system. But there could be other kinds of inequalities that can operate, for example, in the dispute resolution field. There's, particularly in the last year or so, a lot of critique being done in Europe and also here in the States, but also other places, with regards to who gets to be the neutral. Who is it? A woman? Is it a person who's a minority? Is it a lawyer with disabilities, LGBT? I mean, the bias in terms of the selection. In fact, a very provocative comment was made by Catherine Simpson, who was saying that essentially the ADR field developed in the rented judge field developed in the late 70s in response to the then President Carter having basically changed the way the judges were being nominated, making it merit-based as opposed to who you know. And so essentially the ADR providers that developed after that were essentially promising people to have retired judges, which by definition would all be white and male. So, there's very heavy stuff that's in the background here, for which I don't have the answer. But then the third thing on this side of the human side, and this is where I know I will sound like I'm some kind of crazy person, but I actually remember this funny moment when I gave a speech down at Florida at the Florida International Law Society, where I set the timer on my phone to speak for 15 minutes or so. And I finished at 12 minutes, and I said to the phone, and the speech was on big data, okay? And I said to the phone, Siri, turn off the timer. And Siri, without missing a beat, said, I'm sorry, Ben, I can't do that. almost like the HAL 9000 computer in 2001. And it made me think of, you know, somebody. It made me think of sort of, I'm not really in control of my phone. My phone is in control of me. These are devices that we all have that are essentially allowing the state to know where we are at any time, right? Would we really, if it wasn't the cell phone, it was something else that we had to wear a little pin or something, would we really feel comfortable having that pin? But actually, we're very happy to have this. And I go farther than that because I actually met the Director of National Intelligence, Michael Hayden, at one point, who spoke, and who said that with the growth of, you know, all this digital information that's happened, their approach was they wanted all of it. So just think of, since 1995 or so, a vision inside the national intelligence community, which is that everything that you have ever imagined doing anywhere in the world has been stored, and it's being stored somewhere. And then data is being, you know, the famous connect the dots is being done. And there are wonderful technologies that apparently are out there, like Palantir and others, that help you connect the dots. Well, the question again is, do these connections of dots in the algorithms in those settings, do they do algo wrongs? I don't know, but it's something that I worry about. And I think it's something that should be at the top of our minds. So to maybe finish up here, if that's okay, Leah, I would say, first of all, that first concept, which is think about it as technology, but not tricknology. And the idea, I really feel this idea of meditating on algorithms and versus algo wrongs, the human dimension of being able to confuse the algorithms. I guess Abhijit would call these more of the edge cases, but I'm sort of caught between what are the edge and the center, okay? And on the other side, it's this kind of magical incantations of technology that lead us to place more value in the human act hidden behind artificial intelligence than we do in the human act out in the open, so to speak. For me, they're both human acts. And maybe to finish up, I would finish, you know, for example, there is a talismanic effect of numbers. Like if I say something is half right, as opposed to saying something is 50% right, apparently the 50%, because it's a number, has a talismanic effect that's stronger than the half, using those terms. And those are things that happen to us. And it's like, why we do this as humans is a whole meditation itself. But it's just, you know, just to be innocent but not naive. I guess that's what I'd say, in trying to move this forward. I hope that helps to spark some thinking.
Thank you so much, Ben. That was incredibly interesting. Maybe we'll shift now to Julie, and please feel free to take the floor and to grab the screen if you would like to do so as well.
Thanks, Leah, and thanks for everyone for having me. While I set up my slides, I just want to say thanks, Ben, for your comments. You've just, as a pop culture enthusiast, you just got me thinking about all the movies and TV shows I should have included in my presentation. The host has disabled participant screen sharing.
Wow. Colin, if you're quicker than me, if you can enable.
I'm going to make you a co-host, Julie, if that's okay.
I've already been upgraded, everyone. I'm confused. I'm confusing the algorithm right now. That actually, Ben's comments remind me of how I love to not get personalized ads ever, and use my account for everything: work, home, extended family. So I already know that they have no idea who I am because I just enjoy doing that. Yeah, and also I know you mentioned Gattaca. There's a really great TV show called Westworld, And season 3 is basically Gattaca, talking about algorithms. And the show is about an artificial intelligence, but to the next level, which is basically robots. But intelligent robots, maybe even robots that are more intelligent than us. So just to scare you a little bit. So my name is Julie, and I work for the Law Society of Saskatchewan, which is in Western Canada, north of Montana and North Dakota. But today I'm not going to speak so much on the regulatory front, since we ourselves are trying to figure out how to fit AI into our future limited licensing scheme. So that's our big ethical and regulatory dilemma that we have. But I'm going to be speaking based on my experience as a legal tech journalist. So I've been doing that for more than 10 years, and I'm also a lawyer. So I've written extensively about AI and ODR, and I've written about, for example, the British Columbia Civil Resolution Tribunal, user-centered design, etc. So I just want to come at it from that lens, and I want us to think about the narrative that's going on right now, and Abhijit and Ben have really touched upon this really well. This narrative of technology and distrust, and what are the actual goals here when we're implementing these systems. And my argument would be, based on the research that's been done, is there are ample reasons why people would distrust these systems, because these systems are incorporating systemic bias, and others outside of the ODR and legal system have noticed this and are already fighting against this. So that's pretty much what my presentation will be today. But I always like giving people resources, and I thought I'll just do that straight away. These are two excellent books about algorithmic bias. They've both come out within the last few years. I would encourage you to read both of them. It lays out in detail what we're talking about here. Not even if tech is not your forte, you're not an engineer, you will understand these books, and it comes at it from different perspectives. So I encourage you to read Algorithms of Oppression and Automating Inequality, which really deep dive into these things that we're talking about today. So we have already talked about the Loomis case. And so the Loomis case in Wisconsin that was mentioned during the keynote is actually Compass. So Compass is a AI program that can tell you who is going to reoffend in the criminal justice system. This is what they say it does. So ProPublica is a well-known investigative journalism outlet, and they did a report on Compass, and these numbers show you the systemic bias against white and African Americans. And as Ben mentioned, there are reasons why people plead guilty, and there are reasons why people get more time for the same offenses than others. And so in the ProPublica report, it said that essentially when you use this Compass program, African American offenders will have a likely higher rate of saying that they're going to reoffend when actually they don't. And I would encourage you to Google it and actually read the entire report, but it details even in individual cases where the white offender was given a lower risk and they reoffended, and the Black offender was given a higher risk and they never reoffended. So this article has been picked up by every major outlet. It's been in the New York Times, it's been in the Atlantic, it's been in Wired magazine. So this narrative already exists in the public lexicon, that there was a program created to identify who should be in jail longer than others based on the crimes they commit. And it affected a disadvantaged group, African Americans, and it was wrong. So when you're building an ODR system and you're getting pushback, you have to understand that stories like this are out there, that litigation like this is out there. And this public perception, there's a reason why people have this public perception. And so this program is still being implemented and used in different jurisdictions of the US. But in the ProPublica article, what's really interesting is one of the judges in Florida said, I don't even use this program anymore. I haven't been using it for more than 2 years because I already know it doesn't work. Which tells me, why are we creating technology that not only disadvantages one group and perpetuates systemic bias. But then the people who actually purchase it, they don't even use it because it doesn't align to their principles or because they know it's a liability. So then what is the point of this exercise that we're doing in introducing AI into the system? So bringing that idea of, oh, why is my screen not doing anything? Okay, there we go. So bringing the idea forward of distrust, I wanted to highlight a report from the National Legal Aid and Defender Association called Efficiency is Fine, but Equality is Better. And what they did is they brought together a group of people, lawyers, judges, advocates, engineers, people who work in legal tech, and they said, okay, if we introduce ODR into this system, what is that going to look like? What do you think we should be doing? What do you think we shouldn't be doing? And this is the feedback that they gave us. And the report starts off with the number one concern they got, or the number one feedback they got, is distrust right at the beginning from most of the participants. And so the two key points that come out here is that ODR is being sold as a benefit, but it's being used primarily for cases involving low-income individuals. And so I want to unpack this a little bit. One of the themes in legal tech is that you need to have a high amount of data. You need big data in order to build these algorithms. But if we're talking about the justice system, that means you're looking for high volume, low risk cases, right? So this is why Compass was built, because it's high volume. Every county deals with criminal cases. But when you go for the high volume stuff, so evictions is another high volume, that means that you're going to catch people who are low income. And these are the ones that are usually disenfranchised by our justice system. So what is going to be the effect when we add ODR into it? And so I thought this quote really sums up the thinking here. I'm just going to try and, sorry guys. This is my fault for using Keynote. So this quote here sums it up really well. We're not trying to use this technology for Target or General Motors, right? So what are the goals here? And Abhijit brought this up. Is the technology we're using doing what we want it to do? So why are we even trying to bring technology into a system where low-income individuals don't even have the necessary resources that they need now in order to navigate it? Will the technology actually assist them in getting the results they need? Or are we just trying to do this for the sake of efficiency? And this report really highlights this idea of efficiency. There are comments from judges who say, listen, we get hundreds of cases a day. Our dockets are full, and we need something to manage this. So to me, that sounds like, okay, is this a document management issue? Or is this an issue where you actually want to decide hundreds of cases a day? Or is this a human issue? Do we just need more judges? Is it a legal issue? Is the law written in a way that we're just catching too many people? And I think the eBay example was great, right? Under $10, we're just going to refund you anyway. Do we actually need some of that in certain areas of the law? So these are things we need to think of when we're designing ODR systems, because the people who are caught in this system don't have the necessary resources to begin with. So if you add an extra layer or a different type of layer, are they still going to have the same, are they going to have better access, or are they going to have worse access? And another quote in this report said, for example, if there is a small claims dispute of $2,500, which for most people would seem low, but for someone who's making only $1,000 a year in take-home income, that's very high. So how would an ODR system deal with something like that? And so these are things that we need to consider, because there is again, justified level of distrust that's going on here, inside and outside of the legal profession, inside and outside of the justice system when it comes to ODR. And so I wanted to take this up a notch. This is a report from the Center for Democracy and Technology. And this is about using algorithms when it comes to disability payments. So different jurisdictions thought, okay, to be efficient, we're going to add AI into the way that we decide cases where people are filing for disability benefits. And this was disastrous. And I'm going to use Idaho as an example. The ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, was starting to get complaints from people saying, hey, my disability benefits are going down and I don't know why. And so they did research and they found out there was an algorithm being used. The state had developed it with a third party. They would not disclose. Again, we're going back to this whole idea of show us how this algorithm works. And they said, nope, not going to show you. So ACLU decided to file a class action lawsuit against Idaho. It went to the Idaho State Supreme Court, and they found that the algorithm was unconstitutional. And the reason why was two things: design flaws in the algorithm itself and human error. And this goes back to Ben's point of technology. We can't think of algorithms as something standalone. They're created by humans. So there is a tech plus human component to every system. And so what the Idaho State Supreme Court found was there's fault on both the tech and the human side. So on the tech side, it said that they were not using a sufficient data set. They found that the data set they were using was too small and inefficient. And again, this goes back to Ben's point. What information are we actually feeding into the system? And the developers had said that the information needed to be updated every year. That wasn't happening. And that had to be done manually. Which to me, I'm thinking from a user-centered approach, if the data set is critically important to my algorithm, why would I rely on a manual human process to update my data? That tells me that that was not an important criteria to you. Your criteria was just efficiency. And so the courts said that was inefficient. And then also on the other parts of the human side, they had to fill out a form first and then enter it into the system. So there were multiple opportunities for people to mess up the process or make mistakes in the process or simply override the algorithm and say, well, we're just going to make an arbitrary decision. Well, this is the words of the courts. They found that the whole process was just arbitrary, so they tossed it out. And so what I have here on the slide is this report has identified different ways that other groups have been successful in fighting this type of algorithms. And not just in the field of disability benefits. They've talked about, within the report, there's other cases. For example, in Alabama, this was about teachers' pension payments. That was also overturned because they found it was a lack of due process by using that algorithm, because of course they wouldn't show them what the algorithm was and how they were using it. So if you're not going to disclose that, there's no fair process for them to dispute the finding. So insufficient notice, the errors are so unreliable, it becomes arbitrary, which becomes a violation of due process rights. And again, as an ODR developer, you've got to think about these issues. Is what I'm building actually going to disrupt the process itself so much that it becomes just an arbitrary decision? Yes, no, sure, based on a feeling. In that case, then how does technology actually assist in that process? And so based on this report, they made recommendations to state governments on what they should be looking for when they decide to develop this technology or purchase this technology. I think if I'm working in this space and I'm creating technology, I'm creating algorithms, I'm working with different stakeholders, this is where I start. This is where I start, because the thing about legal that's different from tech is tech, the culture is about being the first adopter. You want to get your tech out there first. You want to build your audience. You want to go to scale quickly. You want to get your customers quickly, because as you scale and you feed data into your system, the system gets better. But on the legal side, we have many ethical and legal obligations that we need to think about first. So being fast and efficient sometimes is not the first priority. I would argue many times it's not the first priority. So the first one here is to ensure that decisions align with the government policy objectives and legal obligations. So that's what didn't happen in Idaho, right? They just moved forward with something that wasn't working. And that has to be incorporated into the ODR design. And then the second one here is that it may not be appropriate for decision making or may only benefit for purpose when supplemented by human decision making. And this is the thing, we've got to start thinking about ODR as tech plus, and that plus is the human component, right? This is one of the things that I really like about the British Columbia ODR system. They didn't take humans out of the process. They took lawyers out of the process, which is a whole other discussion, but they didn't take humans out of the process. You can still pick up the phone and call someone and talk to them about how I go through the process, even though it's a tech-based approach. And so that, again, in Idaho, this is the issue here. They created that algorithm. It was actually meant to supplement human decision-making when really the technology didn't actually need to be there in order to do that. And then remember that you're entrusted with building a system, right, that respects and serves those entitled to benefits. So this is really interesting to me, this whole idea of using ODR for benefits, or, and I'm talking about benefits now, but we could be talking about hiring practices, housing practices. There's incentive here on the government side to not pay out benefits. So I don't understand why this system would not account for that. We're talking about flawed data sets, but there's also flawed design here. If I know my data set is flawed, if I know my data set is going to have built-in systemic bias, so the systemic bias here would be that there's an incentive on the government side to pay out less benefits. Why would I not incorporate that into the design of the system itself? And this is something within the ODR and tech space that we need to discuss more. This is a matter that goes beyond efficiency. How do we account for those motivations, right? We have two sets of people here that actually want two different things. People who apply for benefits want more benefits, and the government has the incentive to pay less. So how does tech bridge that? Does tech bridge that? Or as Abhijit talked about, maybe it's a different piece of the black box that tech deals with. So these are kind of the overarching things that I think we need to think about. But so that's the end of my slideshow presentation. But I just really wanted to incorporate here that when we're designing the systems, we really need to think about who's actually using these systems. And I don't mean the lawyers or the judges or the arbitrators, the people who are actually affected by these decisions. What is their agency in these systems? Because one of the key things I found in all of these reports is the lack of agency. There's no increased agency for those who actually get affected by the decisions. So why are we deciding to use technology in the first place? That's how you can find me. Looking forward to your questions.
Right. Thank you so much, very much, Julie. Would you like 5 minutes of questions, or should I do mine and then we'll take questions for everyone at the end? What would you prefer?
I think you can go, Leo, and we can take
go. Yeah.
So I'm following on these two incredibly stimulating presentations that I more want to ask you questions than engage, but I'll try to jump into my presentation, which I hope will be simpatico with what has already been presented. So let me. I'm going to talk about unequal risks. We've already been talking about bias in general, and I want to focus in particular on unequal risks that AI in ODR can create. But first, let me also celebrate AI's contribution and its possibility. So I offer that AI plus ODR magnifies opportunities, and it also magnifies unequal risks. The infusion of technology into dispute handling has really exploded the boundaries of what we can do, and it is helping us envision new things that we can accomplish. As I said, it magnifies access to opportunities, but it simultaneously is also magnifying inequalities that we already have in society, and it's hardwiring these into dispute resolution systems without sufficient transparency and accountability, which of course just reflects what we've heard from the last three speakers. I'd like to think that, as I said, there are some beautiful things happening as beautiful code is being written for ODR. We are expanding access to justice without a doubt, I would argue. We have multilingual, multimedia, multimodal forms of dispute resolution, both for ADR and increasingly now for courts. We've got more and more people using this in online setting. We have innovations that make it possible for us to have cross-jurisdictional arbitration, document verification via blockchain. And when people are applying universal design to dispute resolution tools, we're providing increased accessibility for persons with some disabilities. And you're going to hear tomorrow in our keynote about an incredibly exciting and profound and new plan in India, where there's going to be a nationwide banking and digital payment platform rollout requiring ODR at the point of contact. And we are going to have increasingly bots negotiating on behalf of parties. Writing a beautiful code for ODR has, without a doubt, increased efficiency. It's also increased profit for some, customer loyalty for many businesses, and access to redress, to justice, to opportunities for healing relationships. But we also have the writing of what I would say terrible code throughout societies. With technology using incomplete data, bad data, and biased data, very often unknowingly, although I would wonder if sometimes it's also knowingly. And that perhaps is also kind of responding to the last case study that Julie mentioned. But when we have that and we add no transparency and no accountability, I believe that we have this exponential replication of hardwiring inequalities into systems that either give us options, give us information, give us pathways to communicate, or actually make decisions. And this lack of knowledge about the harm that's being done to individual people in individual cases, but also to the larger patterns, this gives us a lack of seeing as a society and as a field. And it also allows systems to not be required to redress these patterns of inequalities. So if we are writing in beautiful and in terrible code in society, I would like to invite our field to consider why we shouldn't assume that this can play out in ODR as well. If we have inequality in tech, how is that impacting ODR? So I'm going to take a quote here from Woodrow Winchester III in his piece on Black-centered design. He says, even within the sectors of the tech community that advocate for human-centered design, such as human-computer interaction, little has been done to grapple with racism. So how can this unknowingly affect ODR software? If we're turning to people who are focused on human-computer interaction, who say that they care about human-centered design, and that area of the field has not effectively dealt with racism, how is that going to affect ODR software? And then many people have talked about face recognition. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a moment, but it also is in other forms of technology. For example, in the healthcare industry, heart rate trackers, as well as face recognition technology that's used for helping make decisions about loans, helping decide who's going to be interviewed for a job, that is helping decide who can access their bar exam. They are disproportionately inaccurate with darker skin. So what guardrails do we need to ensure that our ODR tools and our platforms are built for equitable data collection, exchange, access, and outcomes? Now, I don't want to just pick on the tech field. I want to challenge my own field. So standing in a glass house, I want us to invite us to think about ways in which we have historical inequality in ADR in the courts. And how is that going to affect as we move forward? And I would argue the boundary between ADR and courts is getting blended or taken down even more so with ODR. But we have long-standing challenges. Let me speak about the part of the field that I spend most of my time in, and that's ADR. We have 40 years of ineffectively addressing the challenges of power imbalances. We've tried, we're working hard on it, but we haven't tackled it. There's a long pattern of unequal outcomes for people of color, research and data showing this as a regular pattern. We have repeat player bias that we have yet to fully figure out. And as Ben already mentioned, we have exclusionary practices, long history of that up to the present day. In fact, I point, you can see the citation at the bottom, to his May 2020 article that specifically speaks to that, as well as he mentioned Catherine Simpson, another recent article in August 2020 that directly deals with this. Can AI help remedy this? I look to AI with hope that it can provide some additional tools to help us with these challenges inside our field, but I also question whether it will merely exacerbate these problems. So I think about AI and diversity and inequality and say, I think that algorithmic and data frames need to include social realities. And this, again, I'm not a tech person, but my understanding from engagement and reading in the field, critical literature on this from inside the tech field, from computer engineering, is that actually including social realities challenges typical programmer training, where the focus is on abstraction and portability, and that's valued over context. So if computer scientists doing AI development are trained in one way and we have a different expectation, we certainly need to be in conversation so that, as our colleague Vicki Rogers says, we don't end up with the software developer being the gatekeeper for justice. Our inputs and outputs need to be designed based on the reality of diversity and inequality in the context. And then Selbitz and et al. Made a comment that I think is worth quoting. To treat fairness and justice as terms that have a meaningful application to technology separate from a social context is therefore to make a category error, an abstraction error. Key to this resolution is shifting from a solutions-oriented approach to a process-oriented one that draws the boundary of abstraction to include social actors, institutions, and interactions. And again, I would say, Julie just mentioned, what is it like to bring stakeholders to the table, including users, and ask them, what is the conditions in which they're living and how does it impact their trust for AI and ODR, and what do we need to do next? And then I want to point to a Pew Research Center study from 2019. I think we need to look worldwide, but let me just show a little bit of data here to try to make a point. Many folks have been championing the idea that basically the digital divide is gone. Most of the world's online. Most of the world has a smartphone. This is really awesome. Let's get to it. But in actuality, data shows that 29% of adults in households where there's an income below 30,000 have no smartphone. Almost half have no broadband access, no computer, and most have no tablet. And a quarter of that population have a smartphone but no broadband. And yet households with incomes over 100,000 have virtually all of these items. And I want to talk about intersectionality and invite that into the conversation in our analysis for just a moment. So here we have 30% with no smartphone, and we also have 44% with no broadband. What happens when those are the same people? Let's just take a moment to look at Houston County, Georgia. And I put in the arrows in case you're colorblind and you can't see the green. So let me just highlight here. This is from Policy Map, and this is the color scheme they use. But this is the outline for the county, and it is 50 to 70% white. And the arrows point outside the county where these areas are 50 to 70% African American. And now when we look at broadband access, we can see who has access and who doesn't. And these darker areas out here, again, in predominantly African American communities, have 30% or more who have no broadband access. And let's look at one other county, Baldwin County, Georgia. Here we have a county that is predominantly white, and the African American community that's 50 to 70% Black is this small island in the middle of that state. And again, we look and see perhaps the impact of gerrymandering or other inaccessibility to making sure that services are equally distributed going on here. And I don't want to just pick on Georgia. These are issues above the Mason-Dixon line. They're issues in every state, and I'm sure there are some other types of issues that play out around demographics and power in other countries as well. But here we have the African American community having 26% with no broadband. So let's just take a moment and say, clearly we can use technology to increase access to justice and participation for ADR and for courts, and rural areas need this. But if not everyone in a rural area has equal access. If you don't have broadband and you don't have a cell phone and you don't have a good bus system to get to a place that has that, how are you going to access? ODR design must respond to these complex and intersectional inequalities. If we don't code for them, we won't have justice. And I want to spend a little bit of time looking at some visuals to try to go deeper into this point before I close. This is a picture in 1978 of the baseline that was used to calibrate colors in photo development. So when you hand in your photos and they're going to develop them in order to have the right color, this was seen as the baseline. This woman named Shirley, who's white and blonde, was the template. And how do we get from that to this? Well, many people with darker skin tones, many African Americans in particular, complained to Kodak and said, the film that you're developing is not coming back showing our family in correct proportion and light. And Kodak did not respond. Instead, when furniture dealers and chocolatiers complained that the differentiation between blacks and browns were not well done, then Kodak responded. And this is written up, Kodak owns up to this, but they did end up responding and created a multiracial Shirley card. This is 1995. So I'd say, have we progressed? Yes, we've progressed. Have we progressed? I want to encourage you to see Coded Bias if you have not seen it already. It's a very powerful film that came out in 2020, and it covers a number of things, and one of them is the profound and important research by Joy Buolamwini and her focus on face recognition at MIT. And I added, this is a screenshot from the trailer, I added the arrows to try to draw your attention. So a face is detected, and here a face is still detected, but look at where the algorithm is detecting the face. And now the human being, Joy, is still there, but the face is not detected. Have we progressed from 1978? And yet, of course, with AI, we've progressed. In fact, I read an article February 3rd coming from India Today about how spinach can send an email now. While AI continues to erase the humanity of people of color, where AI is now being used and we are anthropomorphizing spinach. MIT researchers have overcome the plant and human communication barrier. They've engineered spinach roots to communicate via camera, to send an email to scientists to alert them to to nitroaromatics. And this is very profound. This is extremely helpful because it can identify landmines, pollution, and other environmental conditions. AI has so much to contribute. What does it mean that we have been able to figure out how to get spinach to send an email, but not identify the faces of people with darker skin? AI is expanding opportunities and magnifying inequality. So what do? I argue with many of you, we need new standards. We need accountability, transparency, and very importantly, we need interdisciplinary collaboration. We have so much to learn and so much we need to ask of other disciplines, including journalism that can hold up stories that are untold and hold power to account, including our brothers and sisters and colleagues in engineering and computer science. And we need to work to structurally determine inequality and accessibility. But importantly, and this I hope sets the stage for more conversation tomorrow when we focus on dispute systems design, but I will say that we need to have equality be code, not a coda. If we would like to prevent encoding bias, and if we would like to reduce inequality, they need to be tied to every element of our dispute resolution system, or they're not going to be in the outcomes. And they need to respond to the reality of unequal risks around class and race and rurality, ability, language, documentation status, and all their intersectionalities, just to name a few. One thing I want to close with is just to highlight this. This is horrific. I wouldn't want this to be part of any system at all, let alone surveillance or discipline or something where we're trying to provide access to justice. But also, this worries me as well. The idea that we might think that we've added fairness to our algorithm, but in actuality, we haven't. So how are we going to know if that occurs? We need transparency. So I would say we need a clear box. All threats are not equal with AI, and I have hope. I'm not sure I have optimism, but I do have hope, and I'm committed to working with you to help tackle this together. This is how you can reach me, and thank you. So with that, we've got about 12 minutes, and I'm sure that Ben and Julie have been looking at the chat as I've been presenting, so I want to invite either one of you to jump right in and start to answer questions or engage the audience, and I will catch up by looking at the chat as well.
Well, can you hear me?
Yes, please go, Ben.
Okay, so I've got one here, which is the question of not sure, I think it's from Judge Dimonis, not sure that I agree that algorithmic transparency is all that important. Aren't outcomes what we really want to know and measure? And what I'd say just struck me is that the problem of the, and I like Leah's clear box notion, is that particularly from the advocacy point of view, to see how the process ended up with making the suggestion of whatever it was, is important to deconstruct that process and critique it. And as we've seen in some of these cases, the profound errors in the back end that are actually inherent in what is supposed to look on the surface and nice and slick and all that, like your cell phone, some number that is supposed to be there. So I think that it's really, I just want to emphasize the importance of just trying to see into what's going on, so that people can have confidence in it, and people who are critical can have confidence of the way it was done. That's one comment I saw there that I thought I would run with.
And can I follow up on that to just say, yeah, I agree with what you said. And the other thing is, going back to a point you made earlier about your colleague who talked about the value of identifying what doesn't work, and the kind of work that was being done that you were touting in Japan, where the goal was look at what isn't working. And I think that rather than only rely on one aspect of the team that both builds and is connected to a system, we probably want more eyes on that rather than only software developers. Not to say they don't have a lot to contribute, but we want the expertise of people who are paying attention from a legal standpoint or other forms of dispute resolution standpoint, particularly concerned about access and inequality, and have tons of years of experience and frameworks for that to also see in order to identify patterns that are not working well. The other thing is, I think that fairness is contextualized differently in different settings. And so if we have one discussion about what fairness is, and then try to use the abstract tools that have been made for a particular setting, handling workplace disputes, is that toolbox the same that needs to be used for making a decision about the risk of recidivism, just for example, in a court case. So being able to look inside the box seems like it is valuable for the public as well as for all those that are involved in the ODR system. I think it's a worthy engagement. I'd love to hear other people's points of view on this. I'm really glad it was raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback off that really quickly, because I know someone also asked the question of, well, if a government agency developed an algorithm, wouldn't they be required to be transparent? And I don't know. You know, our regulation hasn't caught up with this, but I think there's a few other things in play here, including proprietary value of algorithms. And we have not discussed algorithms creating other algorithms, which is happening, and that research is being done. So, you know, there is another step to this, which is computer programs creating computer programs that make decisions one day. So we have to keep that in mind. But I think we need a lot of regulatory reform in this space. And I think there's different ways that we can do that. But in terms of fairness, I think of that from a critical race lens as well. You know, who is the one judging fairness here, and what value set are we implementing with fairness? The report that I mentioned from Legal Aid, they did have advocates there from the Native American population, which gave some great context that I didn't have time to go into about what they thought any process should be looking at before we even talk about ODR. So yeah, I'm curious to hear from others what they think about this, because I really think this is about a value system. It's not, look, I think tech can do anything. So the fact that we haven't figured out facial recognition tells me the value set of Silicon Valley, frankly. I'm just putting that out there. Facial recognition is not new. That technology has been around for decades, and we still can't get this right. So if we're talking about this, in the justice system and ODR, what is the value system that we're using here when we're developing technology?
So I see that other people have made comments, and certainly we can invite you to just put things in the chat, but also say if you want to turn on your microphone and jump into the fray, you're welcome to. There's an interesting point about transparency, interesting point about fairness, and also about procedural justice. Tim, Linda, anyone else, feel free.
So Julie, I really wanted to kind of follow up on your observation about the need for transparency as well as regulation. And I think this is a constant battle between which value system do we use in order to enact appropriate regulatory schemes. And if we're not transparent about what that value system is, and make sure that all of the people at the table, as you mentioned with the Indigenous people, having a very unique kind of value system that doesn't come into play when we're developing regulatory schemes, how do we ensure that in a system that we are creating and developing, and I really think that this is more of a broad-based conversation that has to be had. I think that we miss the entire value that AI can bring to the table. I too am a great fan of technology. I think it can be a great benefit, but we have to be so very careful when we're developing these regulatory schemes to ensure that all of the voices that need to be at the table are at the table, and that we are very clear about the value systems that we are using. And I think that goes back to a few years ago. There had been some research done about value systems and ethics and things like that across cultures, and there were some very clear things that came out about what every culture has in terms of values within their own societies. And I think, I don't know how we can incorporate that, but maybe we can talk about that at the later session that we'll have.
Yeah, thank you, Linda. This has been one thought that came out of that was I can remember back in the day the distinction being made between doing something custom or doing it off the shelf. And the idea being that, when I'm listening to Julie's presentation and Leah's, is that, to the extent that there is a pressure to have something that can be mimicked with large data sets, there's kind of a pressure to have something that's sort of off the shelf. While if you're looking for smaller data sets that could deal with a lot of these variables, then you may be more willing to do something custom in terms of the software design. I'm not sure about this, but it's just something. And then from that, as you get these aggregated efforts at software design in these custom spaces, it may be that we will identify sort of common structures at a next level that will mean that the kind of nuances that were required to be put into the custom setting can also be replicated at broader settings. I also want to say to Leah that I'm going to get myself a t-shirt made, which is not Coda, no justice, which I think, or not code, no justice, which I think was just brilliant.
So Ben, when you do that, be sure and order one for me, size small, please.
Yes, dear. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I was going to send you a chat about that as well. Thank you. We have one more minute, and I guess what I want to do is just welcome if Ben or Julie want to say a closing remark. And
before you sign off, Leah, can I say something?
Oh, please, yes, Justice, please.
So Leah, Ben, Julie, and Linda, terrific conversation, and really instructive and informative. I very much appreciate this framing. The point I'm trying to drive at, and Julie, maybe you can take it on, is because I think you hit upon it. This is easy to talk about algorithmic transparency right now, but what are we going to do with true machine learning, right? If you really say that this is a necessary element, haven't you ruled out machine learning as a valuable tool?
I think that's an excellent question. I'll just use what we're doing in my jurisdiction as an example, because we are developing an ODR system, the government is. They've been in extensive consultation, and I've been a part of that consultation with other community justice stakeholders about what we should be building in the first place, right? They showed up and they said, we want to build ADR for traffic court. Here's our discussion paper. Everything's on the table. Everything, right? And so we go into different directions about that. So now we all know what the base, like we actually know what we're building. And so they haven't made the announcement of who the vendor is, but I'm pretty sure it's not going to be a machine learning application. It's not that machine learning is bad. It's just I don't think we've actually figured out how it fits into the justice system yet. That's the issue I have, because regulation is about understanding a practice area and saying, okay, here's the boundaries. We're not really sure if it fits in yet. Like, does machine learning, do we want algorithms that create other programs making decisions? Do we even want technology making decisions? I think those are up in the air questions. Some people might disagree with me and say, no, Julie, people are already using it. Just because people are already using it doesn't mean it's wrong. I mean, not to take an obvious point, but slavery did exist in North America. That was already happening. People decided, hey, let's not do that anymore. So just because we're using a piece of technology while at scale doesn't mean we should. So I'm not sure what the answer to that is yet, which is why I think regulation hasn't happened. But what I would say is I would like regulation about, for example, this proprietary rights. There's a lot of things we do in intellectual property where we say this is fair use, or, we have different exception boxes. I think this is something that needs to be, as Leah said, we need to have a clear box. Let's start there, and then we can figure out, does machine learning have a place here?
Really constructive. I mean, really eye-opening for me too, and appreciate this so much. But one of the reasons I push back a little bit is because the way we've set up the regulatory structure on our sandbox in Utah, in terms of whether we're going to look at the algorithm or outcome, I think it would be terrific, Julie, if there's some point you'd be willing to come and speak to us as we think through our regulatory framework.
You just have to Google my name. You'll find my contact.
Thank you. Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, Justice. Thank you.
This is the beauty of us gathering together and hearing from each other, and hopefully expanding the quality of what we're offering, and the inclusion and the equity of what we're offering. So I just want to thank everyone, and what an amazing morning, or whatever time of the day it is for you. We hope you'll join us again in 3 hours for the part 2 today, and stay safe and take care. Thank you so much, Ben and Julie. Let's give a round of applause.
Thank you, Leah. Okay, thank you, Leah. Always fun.
Yes, thank you, Leah. Thank you to the organizers. I'm having so much fun. I want a t-shirt too, okay? Ben, start the business. I want a t-shirt.
Baby, I like your Baby Yoda in the background there too. I thought that was great.
All right, see everyone in 3 hours.
Okay.
Have a nice lunch.
We good?
I think we're good. I think I'll close the room.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll see you in a couple hours.
See you in a couple hours.
Thanks,
All right.
Leah and Colin. It went really well this morning.
I think so.
Every way. So great launch pad for the
Great, great teamwork. Can't wait to hear your presentation, Jan.
Oh, okay. You're ramping up the bar. I love your visuals, Leah.
All right. See everyone soon. Take care.
Okay. Bye.